Good evening. The time is now 7:30 p.m. Everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting for November 5th, 2020. I'm James Sullivan. As chairman of the board, I'd like to ask you to join me now, please, in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
Flag,
of the
United States of America,
to the republic
which is stand,
one
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and justice.
justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. At least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, and the agenda of this meeting. Also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune. Also filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk and posting such announcements on the Old Bridge Township website. Ms. Silverman, could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Dewhurst,
Here.
Ms. Kilgore,
Here.
Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. Psychowski,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Here,
Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Sachs,
Here.
Mr. Gill,
Here.
Mrs. Shapiro,
Here.
Ms. Sawant,
Here.
Mr. Hart. I did see him before. Ms. Drum,
Here.
and myself, Kim Silverman.
Is Mr. Lavallo going to be here tonight, Ms. Silverman?
I just heard from him. He's out of town at the moment, but if we need him, he'll chime in for us.
Okay, thank you very much. For those watching at home, this meeting is being conducted electronically via a webinar via the internet. It's very unique. We're getting used to it, but it does take patience on all parties involved as we no longer gather together face-to-face in a courtroom. This meeting is being conducted in our own homes and our own offices for the professionals, that is. The meeting is also being televised on OBTV Channel 15, as well as live on YouTube. I remind of those that are watching us on one of those platforms that there is up to a 30-second delay in communication. This becomes important to remember if you wish to personally join the public portion of this meeting. Anyone calling in must lower their TVs or you will be confused by the time delay. What you see in front of you right now, if you're watching on a platform, is the virtual zoning board meeting notice, and it has various phone numbers on there. Those will be important if you want to call in. You can read that notice. Ms. Sawant is going to join me in a few moments, who's the moderator, and probably advise you some other matters that I always forget, but she never forgets. So I'll continue on just to tell you to please have patience. I would ask all the participants here this evening, please silence your cell phone at this juncture so it avoids any future disturbances during the meeting. Our meeting follows the same protocols as always conducted by the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Tonight, there are some general housekeeping matters which will start the meeting. And then we have 3 C variance applications, followed by 2 major applications requiring site plans and C&D variances. I'm not sure that we're going to get to all of them tonight, but we're going to try and do our best. The ending hour is normally 10:30, so we'll see what we can do. Besides that, I want to explain something to you about the way that you will call in. There's a public portion after the testimony of all of a person's witnesses, as it were. You'll see in the beginning that the witnesses will probably be limited to just homeowners, but in the major applications, there'll probably be professionals such as planners, engineers, traffic engineers, architects. Whoever is going to testify on behalf of the applicant to prosecute the application will go on the record. The board may ask some questions. Certainly the township professionals will be asking questions. And then when all the witnesses have testified on each application, it comes time to open up a public portion. That is when you at home, if you have particular interest in any of these matters, would want to call in on those on the phone numbers that are available. Please, I ask you to take notes during the meeting because you may forget. Some of these things go a little lengthy, and if you're listening for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, you may forget what you wanted to ask us. So get a piece of paper. Now's a good time. Get a pen, pencil, and write those notes down. In between the major applications, there's going to be a recess of 5 minutes for the benefit of the stenographer. Everything is taken down verbatim by the stenographer. So she needs a break to set up for the next application. And finally, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Swan, who's the township planner and the moderator of this meeting, and ask her to fill in the blanks that I missed. Ms. Swan.
Good evening, all. For viewers that are new to this platform, couple of reminders. Zoning board members will be unmuted during the first half of the meeting when they will be required to vote on other agenda items. The zoning board attorney, zoning board chairman, zoning board secretary, and the court reporter will remain unmuted throughout the meeting. Everyone else will be muted once presentations for the applications begin. The applicant's professionals will be asked to turn on their video and unmute themselves in the order in which they will testify. During the public commentary period, I will announce the last 4 digits of the caller's phone number to come forward, announce their name and address. I will also announce the last 4 digits of the next caller's phone number so that he or she knows that they are next in line. You will only be able to hear the resident. We will share our screen to display the phone numbers and any exhibits. Please be mindful that there is a 30-second time lag in the presentations. The meeting information will be displayed on the screen multiple times during the meeting so that any resident who wishes to call can join the meeting anytime once it opens up to public. Please be patient. Each one of you will get a chance to speak. Thank you.
Jim, you're muted.
I was doing that because my pet parrot is screaming, and I didn't want everybody to have to listen to that. We're going to go to item number 2 under discussion. So it's reference Lawrence v. Sachs Esquire, Northwood Manor at OB LLC versus Old Bridge Zoning Board of Adjustment litigation. Mr. Sachs, could you fill us in?
Yeah, well, this is a lawsuit that kind of came out of nowhere. Was not expecting this one. The Northwoods Manor actually has filed a lawsuit challenging the approval for the Old Bridge Rifle Club application. So they apparently are a neighbor to the Old Bridge Rifle Club. If the board will recall, we approved that one just recently, maybe within the last 2 months. And they filed a lawsuit challenging the approval that this board gave to the Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club, which was the realignment of the pistol range on that site. The board may recall that Northwood Manor never even appeared as an objector at the hearing, yet they have now filed a lawsuit. So I just need your authorization at this point to defend that lawsuit. And I would suspect that it will probably be a fairly quick litigation matter, as I see it.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs, for filling the board in. And board members, we do have to protect ourselves, and obviously we have to hire an attorney. My suggestion would be, and I'd like to make a motion to hire Mr. Sachs to defend the board at this time. Is there a second?
Second, Walker.
Walker is second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Keldorf?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. That moves us right to item 3, and that's resolutions. And we have one prepared on this matter of Northwoods versus Old Bridge. I'll really read it in. Whereas Northwood Manor at Old Bridge LLC has filed a complaint in the Superior Court of New Jersey concerning the denial of application 38-19Z, Northwood Manor at Old Bridge LLC, naming the Zoning Board of Adjustment of Old Bridge as defendant, bearing caption Northwood Manor at Old Bridge LLC plaintiff versus Old Bridge Zoning Board, docket Middlesex L 007398-20. And whereas there exists a need for service of an attorney to represent the zoning board of adjustment in the above titled action, whereas funds are or will be made available for this purpose not to exceed $5,000, and whereas the local public contracts law requires a resolution authorizing the awarding of contracts for professional services without competitive bidding must be publicly advertised. Now therefore be it resolved, the zoning board of adjustment does hereby authorize and direct its attorney, Lawrence B. Sachs, to represent the zoning board of adjustment in this matter. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be published in the Home News and Tribune within 10 days after the adoption of this matter. This is certified foregoing as a true copy of resolution adopted by the zoning board of adjustment Township of Old Bridge at its public meeting held on November 5th, which will be signed by the board secretary. If anybody has any questions, please ask them now. Otherwise, I'm going to ask someone to move the resolution for approval. I will move the resolution for approval. Is there a second?
Second, Dewhurst.
Roll call, please, Ms. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
yes,
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Zakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'll keep you posted as to how things proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Sachs, we're going to go right back to you. Under resolutions, I have 7-2020Z, the LCP Group LLC.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is application 7-2020Z, LCP Group LLC. It was an application for D4 and C variance approval. Application involves block 21000, lot 2014, located at 1184 Marlborough Road. Application was heard on September 3rd. Property located in the R120 zone. This was property located at 1184 Marlborough Road, comprised of a single tract of land containing 17,637 square feet, located in the R120 zone. The property is presently in a dilapidated condition. The applicant was applying for C variances and D4 floor area ratio variance in order to construct a new 2.5-story single-family home with basement. The existing building footprint measures 1,933 square feet. The applicant proposes to construct a 2,824 square foot home excluding the basement. So the variances that were being sought were for D4 floor area ratio, 0.08 required, 0.6 proposed. For minimum lot area, 120,000 square feet required, 17,637 existing and proposed. Minimum rear yard setback, maximum floor, I've already discussed the floor area ratio. Maximum accessory structure size and minimum accessory side yard setback. The applicant had, and minimum accessory rear yard setback for their shed. There was testimony from Mr. Brent Pappy, from Mr. Joe Highland, from Mr. Pacheco, who was the principal of the applicant. The board approved the application, and there were no special conditions of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Board members, you've heard the resolution. Absent any questions, will you ask somebody to move it for adoption?
Motion. Kilduff.
Oh, is there a second?
a second, Scogno,
Scott, no seconds. Roll call, please, Ms. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
yes,
Mr. Zakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Next one is 68-2020Z. It's 382 Hampton Place LLC. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application 68-2020Z. Applicant is 382 Hampton Place, PL LLC. Application for C variances, property located block 19009, lots 13111 and 13112, located at 25 South Street. This application was heard on October 15th of 2020. The applicant proposes to construct an addition to an existing single-family residence. A new garage will be added at the basement level and an additional 414 square feet will be added to the first floor. An additional 1,425 square feet shall be constructed on the second floor. Properties in the R80 residential zone. The applicant required 2 bulk variances for minimum front yard setback, 50-foot minimum, 25.84 feet existing, 23.62 feet proposed. Minimum side yard setback, 20-foot minimum, 28.11 existing, and 16.33 feet proposed. The testimony was elicited from Mr. John Hanson, professional engineer and planner. And again, there were no special conditions of approval on this one either, Mr. Chairman. So you're voting on the C variances.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Board members, same, absent any comments or questions. Someone move it for adoption, please.
Move it for adoption, Scogno.
Is there a second?
Second, Kilduff.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Once again, Mr. Sachs, 11-2020Z, Waste Management of New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application 11-2020Z, applicant Waste Management of New Jersey, Inc. This was an application for amended major preliminary and final site plan with D3, conditional use, and C variances and design waiver approval. Property located block 4230, lots 1411, 1611, and 23, located at 283 State Highway 34. This application was heard on June 18, 2020 and October 1st, 2020. Property is located in the EDO1 Economic Development Opportunity Zone. Subject property consists of 3 lots, block 4230, lots 1411, 1611, and 23 at 283 Highway 34. Property is adjacent to an auto service facility as well as First Friends Childcare. Commercial and residential uses are also in close proximity to the project location. Project lies fully within the EDO1 zone. It's currently developed with a waste management facility, including 2 buildings with accessory structures, 2 diesel fuel dispensers, and stone/gravel parking area for the employee, and measures approximately 4.89 acres. The applicant seeks amended preliminary and final site plan approval to commit the construction of a compressed natural gas, CNG, vehicle fueling system with associated site improvements to facilitate on-site refueling of natural gas-powered waste hauling vehicles. Applicant proposed to connect the proposed CNG fueling system to the existing natural gas utility main along Route 34 via a lateral connection. The gas will be compressed and stored within the equipment area located along Route 34. The equipment area would be fenced with an 8-foot high fence and has gated access and would be secured by safety bollards. The CNG is delivered from the equipment area to an overhead truss system located above the existing waste hauling vehicle parking spaces. Vehicles are connected to the truss system to be refueled. The applicant intends to pave the entire parking field and CNG facility with asphalt, install a new fire hydrant on the driveway, construct landscape islands in the gravel parking areas with shade trees, and 9x18 striped parking spaces. As I stated before, a D3 conditional use variance is required as the applicant fails to satisfy all conditions of the land use ordinance section 250-38.1 and 41. There were a number of bulk variances. Some of them were previously approved at a prior application, that being for minimum landscaped area ratio and for loading zone. The newly created ones for location of accessory structures to be in the side yard and rear yard. This they are in the front yard. Fencing height, which is limited to 6 feet and is proposed at 8 feet. There were a number of design waivers. They're too numerous to go through at this point, but suffice it to say, actually I'll go through them just so on the record. For benches, trash receptacles, bike racks, 3 landscaping waivers, and parking stall size. The applicant provided a number of witnesses. Mr. Thomas Mitchell, who was the professional engineer. Ms. Barbara Elin, who was the professional planner, along with Mr. Andrew Janu, who was also the professional planner. Mr. Martin Tufty from Waste Management. Dr. Noah Ryder of Fire and Risk Alliance. Mr. Aaron Jones of Fusion Engineering, Chief Christopher Tazi of the Hamilton Township Fire Department. And there were several special conditions of approval. Let me just read them into the record real quickly. The applicant agreed to shift and relocate the CNG fueling area slightly to the east to provide further buffering to the site, subject to the review and approval of the professional staff, to pave the entire existing parking field and new CNG fueling area with asphalt to eliminate graveled areas, stripe where necessary with 9x18 parking spaces, subject to the review and approval of the professional staff, adding an additional fire hydrant on site adjacent to the existing driveway, and adding landscaped islands with shade trees in the new parking areas. The applicant also agreed to seek a NJDOT highway access permit for any disturbance in the state right-of-way, which according to applicant would be undertaken by New Jersey Natural Gas. The applicant also agreed to provide a new landscaping plan subject to the review and approval of the professional staff. And finally, and most importantly, as I see it, the applicant agreed to provide training and continuing education to all Township of Old Bridge fire districts on a periodic basis. So this application was approved at the October 1st meeting, and you're voting on the resolution this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Board members, you've heard the resolution. I'm sorry, yes, you have heard the resolution. Absent any comments, someone want to move it for adoption?
Can I tell you who was able to vote?
Well, I am, so I'll move it.
Okay.
I'll
Mr.
second it.
Okay, or Ms. Kilduff, okay. Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. All right, Mr. Sachs, we'll let you catch your breath. We're going to need you back in a couple of minutes, all right? Item number
Go get
4,
some more water.
minutes. You go back up to bat in like the next 4 minutes.
Okay.
September 3rd minutes, Board, 2020. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review them. Absent any commentary or suggestions for additions, deletions, I would ask someone to move them for adoption.
I'll move them. Dewhurst?
I'll
Is there a
second
second?
Scogno.
Scott, no seconds. Roll call, please, Ms. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Sekowsky,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Okay, we're going to move to our C variances for this evening. As I said earlier, there's 3. Mr. Sachs will be back up with me in a second. Now, about that award, the contract that we just gave you, was that about the same amount of money that you were going to expect to get the same amount of words?
No.
Okay, I hope there were more. All right. This is matter 77-2020Z, Kathleen Salveson. This is in TCD R16 zone. 7 Whitewood Place for a 17 by 22 addition, requiring a C variance. Is Ms. Salveson here?
Yes, yes.
Could we have her turn her?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, the board attorney is going to swear you in. Is anyone else going to testify with you this evening?
My father's here, the guy that's getting the room built for him. If he, let me put my video on. Let me
Yeah,
see.
that's
Oh,
good.
there he is.
Okay, if he's going to say anything, he has to be sworn in. If he's just going to watch. he
Are
doesn't
you
have to.
saying anything? No, I don't think he's gonna say.
Okay, the board attorney will swear you in.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Salveson, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name and address for the record.
Kathleen Salveson, 7 Whitewood Place, Old Bridge, New Jersey, 08857.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Sachs, before I proceed, I've been told that while we're going to hear this application, we're not going to vote on it tonight. Could you explain to the board why?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. I think Ms. Salveson had some issues in terms of getting all the notices signed. I know she went door to door to her neighbors, did serve some by certified mail. As an accommodation, I told her that we can proceed forward this evening, but we would not be voting on this, and that in the interim, prior to the next meeting, she will make sure that service is proper. So,
Okay.
Right.
And so we're well within our rights then, Mr. Sachs, to hear this?
yeah, I mean, we're obviously not taking any vote on this application this evening. We'll see if there's any members of the public, who'd certainly want to talk during the public portion.
Yep.
If they are, I'm sure that the applicant and the board can take those comments under advisement. And, I would assume at the December, Kim, what meeting would it be?
December 3rd.
At the December 3rd meeting, we'll be in a position to vote on this,
Okay.
assuming that the notice is proper at that time.
And there'd be a public portion tonight and on the 3rd.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sachs, for that. Ms. Salveson, I don't know if you testified perhaps back in 2012 when you guys did an addition.
Yes, I came in.
I'll refresh your memory though.
Right.
What we ask people to do when they're doing home projects, as I like to refer to them, improvements on their homes that require a variance, is just to tell the board in your own words what you're going to do, why you're doing this, how you're going to accomplish it. Then I'm going to go to the professional for the township, Mr. Gill, who's going to explain why there's a violation and what we would need to, why you're seeking a variance and what we would need to do to approve that. If you have any exhibits, I'm assuming we already have them because we can't accept any right now. And what may happen is the board members may have some questions for you. Mr. Gill might have some questions for you. And then we'll listen to the end of your testimony, at which time we'll continue this matter until December 3rd. You have any questions of me at this point?
Okay, no, I don't.
Okay, you can proceed then, ma'am, at your own pace.
Okay, I just was looking to add a bedroom and bathroom onto the the left side of my house, if you're looking at the house. It's for my elderly father here that he's at the point where he can't be alone anymore. I've got him in an apartment right now in Glenwood, which is very close to me, but the running back and forth, and he's fallen a few times over there. So it's just gotten to the point where I wish I could have him here with me all the time. But my house, you saw the picture up in the beginning there, it's a split level. So every level is stairs, so if he's in a bed, he has to go upstairs to go to the bathroom, and then he has to go upstairs to get a shower, or, it was just not working. He stayed here several times with me, recovering from surgeries now and then, and it just wasn't feasible. It's not good to have him up and down the stairs, especially if I'm not around. So it would be ideal if I could just go through my dining room and put a bedroom over there with a bathroom with a shower and everything would be on one level for him.
And I assume that as we face the surveys in front of you as well, you can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if I look at this, the area we're talking about is off to the left, and
That's
that'll be a kind of ground level or indoor level for him all at once, all at one.
Oh, it's right, ground level, just right to the side of that level of my house there.
Well, certainly as our population ages, we're seeing a lot more of this. It's come before the board many times for the, the quote, mother-daughter, in this case, daughter-father. But nonetheless, it is a situation that's admirable when people bring in those that raise them. So
right.
I applaud you on that.
Thank you.
Having said that, however, now I'm going to have to ask the professionals why this is a problem or why it's a violation. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
As Ms. Salveson was discussing, she applied for this addition through my office back in May of this year. The applicant is proposing an addition, as she put it, on the left side of the home. The addition is approximately 17 by 22, 17 wide by 22 deep. The resulting setback would be 14 and a half feet, where a 15-foot minimum is required. In addition to the side yard deficiency that's being created on the left side of the home, there is a total side yard deficiency. The zone requires a 40-foot side yard setback, and the applicant is proposing 24 and a half feet, a little more than half of the requirement. The property was subject to an application as is part of the overall application. Went to the board in 2012, as you're aware, Mr. Chairman, and got an addition on the right side of the home. That's the second shaded area that you saw in the survey. I think Vina's bringing it back up now. So to clarify for any members of the board members of the public that may be watching, that right side shaded addition was a previous addition that was approved by variance. And as Ms. Salveson said, we're talking about the left side where it says proposed one-story addition. And those are the reasons that we're here this evening. It's a side yard deficiency of about a half a foot on the left side, and then a total side yard deficiency of 40 minus 24 and a half. My simple math is failing me.
Is it 40 where it's 24/6 where 40 is required?
Yes, which is roughly 15 and a half feet. A deficiency of 15 and a half feet.
Mr. Gill, is there any way that they could have cut a foot off on one side, or could they have reconfigured this where would there be no variance relief?
They definitely could. I mean, we're talking about an addition. So an addition can be theoretically any dimension that one might want or contemplate. I don't know functionally. I think that's a better question posited to Ms. Salveson.
I know, I do have some, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
my architect had explained to me too that there's definitely space needed, because I'm doing a bathroom as well. So between even the toilet and the sink and there is definitely minimum requirements, which, you need a certain amount of space to put those things in there properly. And again, though, if this is a lot of extra space that I'm looking at. I don't know if there's a way we could cut this down and I don't need this variance. I wonder if that's something we should consider.
Well,
Ms. Salveson.
yeah, I'm really
Mr.
sure that
Chairman.
let Mr. Gill finish on what he's
Okay,
saying, and
sure.
we'll get back and talk about this.
So Ms. Salveson actually was just kind of expanded. I don't know if she realized that she was doing it on what I was saying. So while the addition can be any size, I imagine that this product, this 17 by 22, is the product of some considerations that they had about their needs. So I'm assuming that this is what they need. But yes, we could reduce a half a foot off of this addition in terms of the width, and we would be reducing the application by at least one variance. There would be no side yard deficiency on the left-hand side. With regard to the overall application, though, the board would still have jurisdiction because there is still a deficiency of the overall.
Right. Okay.
The overall side yard. And I think if my memory serves, that was part of the discussion that Ms. Salveson and I had, that if you're going for the one, the half a foot may not be the big issue. I think the larger issue may be the overall side yard.
All right. Right.
Certainly to the pleasure of the board and what the board.
Mr. Chairman, I just had one question, and I'm looking at I'm actually looking at the aerial. Ms. Salveson, is there a way that you could do this at the rear yard of your house? I know that I see a pool. Is there an in-ground pool there?
Yes.
All right. And you have a patio between the in-ground pool and the house?
A patio. Yes.
All right. So putting the addition over there would not be feasible, right?
No, and I
Okay.
didn't know. Like off the back of my house there's
Yeah.
that deck there too. It wouldn't be.
And how-
What? We've come this far, Mr. Sachs, right? We've come this far. We might.
No,
as
no,
well
I'm just
continue.
raising it because
I
then
got.
you don't trigger any rear yard variances. I just want to vet
Right.
this out. And on the
Okay.
other side of the house, would it not be feasible to put it over there just based on the way your house is configured? If you
Yeah.
did it-
No.
Where
Okay.
the original addition is.
Yeah.
No, there's like no room left over there. That was pretty much, I went over as far as I could, I think, the last time without
Okay.
impeding on that neighbor over there. No, we're fine. Where it is probably the best place that
All
it
right.
should be.
Okay.
I appreciate that consideration.
No
Great.
problem.
Well, I
Yep.
visited her property. It certainly has the availability, even though it's going over by a half a foot. I don't know if there's going to be any public commentary on this, but it's going to be a little out of character in the neighborhood. But nonetheless, obviously, if it matches and it serves a purpose, it looks like.
Yes. I went around yesterday to take some pictures, as Mr. Sachs and Kim had suggested, and I couldn't really tell on any houses that had some additions or not, but there definitely is a mother-daughter here that's going to look, my house will look very similar. But I felt funny taking pictures of my neighbors' houses. Everybody was out yesterday. It was a nice day, so I wasn't able to get a picture.
It's a typical development where many people reinvested in those homes and did additions on them. It's a very, very nice street. and it's very
It
well
is.
kept.
It is.
And when I viewed, I could see the various configurations had been changed in the area. So I don't know that it's going to be that out of character. It's gonna
No,
look-
and
it's
yeah,
gonna look
I
a little
agree,
wild.
Jim, also looking at the aerial,
Yeah.
there's a lot of large homes here,
Yes.
which
And
appear to have
aesthetically,
additions.
putting it on
Yeah.
the other side, it's gonna look, pleasing to the eye, because if I kind of kept going in one direction, they really modeled it nicely. It's gonna look pretty sharp, actually.
The
Yeah,
one
and in the case, this is a case where you don't want to have a second floor because of the fact you don't want him climbing stairs.
No, that's the whole point, right? Once he gets it, once he's in, he's good. Then he
Okay, let
doesn't
me
have to
see,
go anywhere.
let me see if Mr. Gill has anything else before we proceed.
The only other thing that I was going to posit, since we kind of went down this line of questioning, this thought process of character, the other thing to note is that while there is an addition that's being put on, it isn't exceeding the FAR for the zone. So in terms of massing, the home is well within its rights, where even if we could contemplate another configuration, this amount of square footage isn't going to create an issue.
All right, good.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Mr. Sachs, anything else?
No, I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
I'm gonna go to the board members. I'm gonna go from left to right as I always do as we sit on the panel in the courtroom. Mr. Scogno. Was that no, sir? I didn't.
Nothing at this time, sir.
Okay, Ms. Kilduff?
Nothing.
Mr. Connor, is he with us or no? Not, right? Okay.
Connor's not here.
Okay, Mr. Dewhurst?
No questions.
Mr. Walker?
I have no questions, but I'm in favor of voting for this application.
Okay, Mr. Stoner?
No questions.
And I believe Mr. Psychowski.
No questions.
Okay. I don't have anything else, and I don't think the boards has anything else for you this evening, ma'am. It would be, obviously, we're going to open up a public portion tonight, as I said, because we have to, and it would only be right. And then you're going to have to renotice in a timely fashion so that when we come back on December 3rd, all of those will have been presented to Ms. Silverman. By what date, Ms. Silverman?
It would be December 3rd. I have all the information, and I will have the letters done tomorrow.
Okay,
Oh,
when
perfect.
when is the return on them? Just as long as it's by
10 days before.
Prior.
Okay, so what?
What's the date? Let's all count that.
Is it 10 business days?
23rd.
What is it?
November 23rd.
All right, I'll have that done to you, Kim. Well before then. I'll go right to the post office and get the receipts as
Thank
soon
you.
as I get your letter.
Okay.
Okay.
In that case, unless you have anything else to tell the board right now, Ms. Salveson, I'm going to open up a public portion, okay?
I'm fine. Okay,
Right.
thank
Anybody
you.
at home, this is matter 77-2020Z. The location is 7 Whitewood Place. If you have any comments or questions about this application, there is not going to be a vote tonight, but the public's portion will be open for commentary. Please call in on the phone numbers that were advertised earlier, and we're going to put it back up on the screen again. If Ms. Swan could provide that, please. And Ms. Swan, do we have anyone on the line at present?
I didn't see anybody.
Okay.
We do have people, but no raised hands. Sorry.
Not for them. Okay. Well, let's just give it 1 minute and then we will continue this on to December the 3rd.
All right, you had to go to bed. Oh, I'm still talking on there, right?
We can hear you.
I know, I'm saying my father's falling asleep. I'm like, oh, you got to go to bed.
Any further calls?
I don't see anybody.
Mr. Sachs, is that adequate for this evening?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, we're going to close the public portion for this evening. This matter will again be heard on December the 3rd, at which time, if Ms. Salverson wants, we will take a vote on the proposed variances. And there will be another public portion on that evening. Ms. Salverson, before I close, is there anything else you want to tell us?
No, I'm good. Just thank you for considering me and letting me present this to you. And thank you, Mr. Sachs and Kim, for all your hard work.
Well, thank you for being a good daughter.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sure your father appreciates that. We'll see you
Yes.
back here again December 3rd.
Okay, thanks
Thank you,
very
ma'am.
much.
Thank you.
We're gonna go back for.
All right. Next application would be 81-2020Z. That's Margazala. How would you say it, Mr. Slikowski? Can you pronounce it? Suzuki?
Shizeska.
Are you there, ma'am?
I see her on there.
And
Hello.
Did I get close?
That's close. Czyżewska.
Would you pronounce your name,
Krzyżewska.
please?
Czyżewska.
Okay. Mr. Sachs is going to swear you in, okay? Is anybody else going to testify with you this evening?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. Sachs.
Ma'am, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name and address for the record.
Małgorzata Czyżewska, CZYZEWSKA, 271 Austin Avenue, Old Bridge, New Jersey, 08857.
Thank you.
Ma'am, we understand that, and I'll announce to the board, this is 271 Austin Avenue. It's a corner lot, and apparently you need to rebuild a fence because one got knocked down. So this is going to require a C variance. If you were listening to me earlier, you heard me speak to the other woman and say, please tell us in your own words, what happened, what are you looking to do, and why do you understand there's a variance necessary? Then, of course, it will go to the professionals, and we'll come back to you. On your matter, should you want to vote tonight, we will be prepared to give you a vote, okay?
Okay.
You can proceed, ma'am.
Okay. I currently, like you said, I live on a corner lot. I currently have a 6-foot tall wooden fence that, based on my contractor, is about 30 years old. It was blown over in the last few windstorms that we had, and I would like to replace it in the same location that the fence is currently at the same height. I do believe I need a fence because I have a young child and a dog that I would like to have privacy from the street for. I do understand that I need a variance because on a corner lot, I'm considered to have 2 front yards. So the front yard portion would only be allowed to be 4 feet instead of 6. And that's why we're here.
Very good. You certainly did your homework on that as well.
I tried.
That you said that fence was there when you moved into there?
Yes, I purchased the home 5 years ago, and according to my contractor, the fence was there a long time.
Okay. And you want to replace it with, I guess, a solid vinyl?
Yes, solid vinyl. It's currently solid wood.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Gill about this, okay? Thank you. Mr. Gill?
Thank you, Chairman. There's really not much for me to say. She stole my thunder.
She did.
She verbatim said what the issue was. So for the record, the applicant is proposing a 6-foot solid fence. Our ordinance requires that front yard fences be 4 foot and 50% open. On a corner property, on a secondary front yard, you can build or you can erect a 6-foot fence solid, but it must be set back from the property line approximately 5 feet. So from its current location where it is today, she'd have to kick it towards the house 5 feet in. And given the development pattern of the property and the improvements that are located there, you can see that there's a ground level deck in the back left corner. There's a wood porch that comes out the side with some steps. She felt that that would really be onerous and felt that the alternative of seeking a variance would be the better avenue for her. I struggled with this application because when it came in, it was clear that the fence was existing, but we couldn't find a variance approving the installation, and we couldn't find any pre-existing or previously issued permits that we might be able to hang our hat on. And the applicant then pursued the variance as the most appropriate course.
Thanks, Mr. Gill. Would you say this is kind of going to place an undue hardship on her if we can't allow her to do it the way she wants it?
Yes, I think so, because for her to have a privacy fence, which is right and proper, and the zoning ordinance contemplates it, she would have to go through considerable expense to reconfigure her yard to accommodate it.
Okay. That's what I thought you were getting at when you said the deck and everything is in the way. I didn't get the chance to look at this property, but I did see an overview of it. So I'll take you at your word for that, and I appreciate that.
I did supply a PDF document that has numerous photos of the backyard as it is now.
I think Kim Ravina had it, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had the survey and I saw that, and I was on Google Maps and I took a look at your house. I didn't get a chance to ride by, but I kind of understand this is not, oh, here we go. I don't have that. Oh, okay, that's good.
So you can see that, Chairman, that ground level patio that's made
Yes.
of wood, and then the concrete that goes towards the house.
Well, I think that would be quite expensive to try and redo that, would it not?
She'd probably have to tear it all out.
Yeah.
But we don't know how it's supported, but
I
at the very
understand.
you would have to shore it all up.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like it would be an undue hardship to me, but we'll see what the board has to say. Anything else, Mr. Gill?
No, Chairman. Well, actually, you know what? I will say this: that if you look actually in picture 6,
Yeah.
photo 6, and even on the survey that was provided, the 6-foot fence. One of the concerns with 6-foot fences in corner properties is sight visibility at the intersection. You don't want to create an obstruction that makes it so that we create an unsafe condition at the intersection. You can see clearly here that the fence is more than 25, 30 feet back from the intersection on that side, and the right of way is in excess of 10 feet to 7th Street. I don't know that, while we haven't done a formal line of sight or sight triangle study, it doesn't appear to create any sight obstruction.
And it didn't appear to me to create any when I looked at this, a similar picture except above. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Mr. Sachs, you have anything for this witness?
No, my concern also was the site triangle issues, but I don't see that here. Plus, it looks like that's a controlled intersection with a stop sign, so obviously that would be fine.
Okay. Board members, again, left to right. Mr. Scogno,
Yes, one question, please.
go right ahead.
Is there a gate on that corner lot, corner home of your fence?
A gate, yes, right where that sidewalk is.
Yes, and that's cement
In
walkway,
picture 5, yes.
and that goes to the intersection, is that correct?
Not the intersection, it goes on to 7th Street. The intersection's a little further
Right.
in front of the house.
And that walkway was there when you purchased the home?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gilgroth,
I can say with all knowledge that there has been a fence there for 55 years.
you're not giving your age away, are you?
Yes.
Okay.
There used to be a really big tree there too.
Okay.
So, and no, that fence will not be in any sight line.
Okay.
I grew up
There'll
right
be
down
no
the
problem.
street.
No
Nope.
problem with motor traffic.
No, nope, it won't be a problem at all. You could see both ways. It's not a problem getting out.
Thanks.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope.
Mr. Dewhurst.
If Ms. Kildorf says it's been there for 50 years, I will not dispute her. No questions.
55 years.
Okay. Vice Chairman Walker.
No questions.
Okay. Mr. Stoner.
No questions.
All right. And Mr. Slikowski.
One question. If the fence was to be moved to fit the regulations, would it have to go into that existing concrete patio?
Mr. Gill.
Yes, it would. It would have to go into the concrete patio. It'd have to shift basically towards the house. If you're looking at photo 5 there, it has to basically, we have to remove a panel. So it would go 5 feet closer to the house. It would hit the concrete patio. It would definitely hit. Actually, you can see it even better in picture 4. In picture 4, it would hit basically everything. They cut that by about a quarter.
Thank you. No questions.
Okay. We'll go back to you, ma'am. Do you have anything else that you would like to say? Because if not, I'm going to ask you if it's okay for me to go to the public portion.
I don't have anything else. I just know that in the PDF page, the next page after that are just a couple other houses in the neighborhood that have very similar setup.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, very good. I see. You certainly did your homework.
I tried. Kim was very helpful.
Ms. Kilduff, can you attest to the 55 years of some of these fences?
Not all of them. Not the white ones, because
Okay.
the white ones weren't around 55 years ago.
Okay. Enough of that, I guess. Ma'am, I'm going to go to the public portion on this matter, okay?
Sure.
Okay. This is 81-2020Z. The location is 271 Austin Avenue for a fence on a corner lot. We're going to require a C variance. If anybody has any questions or comments on this, we're going to ask you to call into the numbers that you see on your screen in front of you. At this juncture, is there anybody on the line, Ms. Solon?
No, not at this time.
We're going to wait about a minute, please. And if you have commentary on this, please dial one of those numbers.
No raised hands.
No raised hands?
Nope.
Okay, Mr. Sachs, we met our requirements?
Yes, we have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Absent any other commentary, ma'am, I'm going to ask the board to vote on this, okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Now we have Mr. Gill, this is just a C variance for the height over and the front yard, right? It's two.
It's two variances. It's for the height and for the composition. It's a solid fence as opposed to a see-through fence.
Okay, 6 where 4 is required and solid versus
50%
solid
over.
versus see-through. Mr. Sachs, can this be one vote?
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right, board members, for the C variance, is someone in favor of moving it?
I'll move it. Dewhurst.
Is there a second?
Second, Psychowski.
Moved in second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Ms. Gelderf,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
It certainly seems like it would cause a real hardship, an undue hardship. My vote is yes. Good luck on your fence, ma'am.
Wait,
Jim, we have a resolution.
Okay, I forgot.
No problem. This is which application number? Application number 81-2020Z. The applicant is Mel Gorzada Shivzeska, property located 271 Austin Avenue, block 26031, lot 8. Applicant was seeking two variances, this being a corner lot. One of them is the height of the fence, 4 feet maximum, 6 feet proposed, and the requirement that 50% of the fence be visible or be not totally solid. And this is going to be a solid white fence at 6 feet high. The only special condition of approval, construction to be completed within 1 year of the issuance of the building permit.
You okay with that, ma'am?
I have my contractor ready to go next week.
Okay, does someone want to move the resolution?
I'll move it, Walker.
Walker, Vice Chairman Walker moves. Who's the second?
Second, Kilduff.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Ms. Gelderf,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, once again, good luck, ma'am.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Debbie, are you up on this?
I'm ready.
Okay. Mr. Clauser, you're prepared, I assume, right? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Next matter is 46, I'm sorry, 2020Z, DCH Investments. It's a CR zone through 956 Route 9 North for sign height and square footage variance. So requiring a C. This is the Honda dealer on Route 9. Peter Clauser Esquire is representing the applicant. Sir?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your professional staff. Yeah, Peter Clauser with the firm Heilbronn Pape on behalf of DCH. I also have with me Michael Gallagher, who is the engineer responsible for the plans that are in front of the board. We were here a couple of months ago, and we had a thorough hearing. At that time, we presented testimony from the dealership's general manager as to the location of the dealership, the people that visit the dealership, and then Mr. Gallagher testified at length as to, again, the location of the dealership, where it is on Route 9, the site distances approaching it. And the applicant proposed a 30-foot high single pylon sign. And we had some discussion with the board and some comments about seeing if there's anything we can do to lower the sign height and change the signage. We actually received some comments, I believe, from you, Mr. Chair, as well as Vina, about exploring the possibility of having two signs to alleviate some of the vision issues approaching the site and to lower the height. So the applicant went back and looked at the property, potential signs from Honda, and worked with them and came up with a plan that was revised and submitted to the board, where we're no longer seeking any height variance. We've reduced the sign height for the Honda sign to 11 feet. There's a mistake on the plans where it says 10 feet, but I just want to be clear, it's 11, which is what your ordinance permits. And to introduce the comments from Vina and I believe you, Mr. Chair, a second sign, which is a directional sign that is much lower in height. I think it's 4 feet 9 inches in height. So to help alleviate that view as you're coming in. So I presented this plan to the board, or I delivered this plan to the board, and I spoke with Vina with regard to it. And what we were asking for is the variance relief for the area of the Honda sign, the setback, which has always been the case all along, and then to have a directional sign. And Vina said, Peter, I'm going to treat the directional sign as a second freestanding sign. So ask for the variance as to have two freestanding signs. So the second sign, which I'm calling the directional sign, when you treat it as a second freestanding sign, it's below the area requirements and the height requirements, and it has the same setback as the Honda sign. So the variance relief that the applicant is asking for is to have the two freestanding signs. And then we were also asked if the pylon sign, the Honda sign, can be wrapped so that there is no pylon and it makes it look like a larger monument sign. And of course, we can do that. And I think that might technically create an area variance for the overall sign. I'll let Vina speak to that. But I think that also creates an area variance. So we have two freestanding signs. The Honda sign is 11 feet. It meets the requirements. The area of the actual signage is 25 feet, but the overall area when the pylons are wrapped is 55 feet. The directional sign is 4.9 feet, so that's below the 11-foot requirement. And not 4.9, excuse me, 4 feet 9 inches. It has an area of 12.2 feet for the signage, but the overall, when you include the base of that, is 19 square feet. And both of them have the same setback from the right-of-way of 7.44 feet, but they both meet the setback from the actual street. So they're all located in the same spot. We've added the two signs. And if I could, I would just like to, I think all of the testimony was presented last time we were here about the operation of the site, approaching the site, its location. I don't want to put the board through that again, but if I could, Mr. Gallagher was sworn last time. I'd remind him that he was sworn and ask him if he could just identify where the two signs are located on the site and confirm the numbers that I just presented to the board.
Mr. Gallagher, I'll caution you that you're still under oath.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Vina, if you wouldn't mind just zooming in on the southwest corner of the property where that toward the shared property line with the McDonald's, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So at this view, you can see both of the entrances If you'll recall from our last hearing, we had originally proposed a 30-foot tall sign located more towards the center of the property, just to the north of the dealership building at the driveway. And I gave extensive testimony on the importance of the visibility of this sign because of the way the road curves. You have the overpass of Milletta Way, and it's as you can see, it's a 3-lane high-speed highway. So the visibility of the sign is of paramount importance. The dealership had a lot of history of customers driving past the site because the notification of the existing sign just comes too late. So when it, as Mr. Clauser mentioned, when it became clear that that the board and the board's professionals were not comfortable with a 30-foot tall sign, we went back to see what conforming signs Honda had available that would be more palatable to the board, and then relocate them to be in a place, a location where they become immediately visible as you come around the bend and through the underpass under Milletta Way. So on the right side, you'll see our 5x10 illuminated freestanding sign. That's just the Honda logo sign, which has a 5x5 panel. The 10, again, is a typo. There was some miscommunication between my client and I. This is an older version of the same sign. The current version that's available is actually on a 6-foot pedestal base. So it's actually 5x11, which would be about 55 square feet if you count the base towards the area of the sign. And we place that at the absolute southernmost point on the property where it would be visible, because we want vehicles as they come around the curve to immediately identify that the Honda dealership is here and you're approaching your entrance. And then, as an additional measure, we added the small 12.2 square foot directional sign a little further to the north, just south of the first entrance point into the site, which basically it's the most heavily used entrance of the two entrances because it's southernmost, but it's also where you enter if you're going for service, which is a large portion of the dealership's business. And so between these two signs, we think we achieve a similar effect to the 30-foot sign and a much better effect than the sign we got approved as part of the site plan approval several years ago.
And Mike, you heard me identify for the board the variance relief that's associated with the signs, the 2 freestanding signs and the setback, and the area for the one sign of 55 feet when you consider the base. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's a 55 square foot sign where 40 square feet is permitted, and the setback is at 7.44 feet, which is the same setback that was originally approved with the original application. And we really feel that the additional area and the closeness to the road, proximity to the road, is essential for safety of motorists to be able to identify the site and make the necessary lane changes and pull into the property.
And the area of the H, the Honda, the actual sign, the blue top of it is 25, which is less than what's permitted in the zone. It's
Correct.
when we wrap the sign and consider all of that sign area that we need the variance for.
That's correct. The H is 5x5.
Mr. Chairman, this application was presented in great detail the last time that we were here. I think the question was, can we come up with a different scheme that was a little more palatable to the ordinance and to the board? I think your applicant has done that. And so I would ask that, maybe we can go to the professionals and the board members and see if we have achieved that. You're muted, Mr. Chair.
The bird was yelling again. That's why I muted myself. I thought we agreed that the wrapping, most people were, I thought, in favor of that wrap. I know it's the identity of Honda, and I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. I got kind of lost when he was testifying as to where the location is. It exactly at the more southern driveway?
Well, the identification sign is actually it's really at the southerly property line, the shared property line with the McDonald's.
Right there,
That's,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
where Vina's hovering, that is the
I see.
identification sign, and then slightly further to the north is the directional sign.
That's fine. Okay. I just want to be clear on that. Thank you.
No
And I
problem.
think that might have been the point that was brought up either by you and or Vina. Get the sign out as close to the beginning of your property as possible so that you can sort of trigger that, oh, okay, Honda's here. I got to start looking for the driveways. And then you throw in the directional sign, which is, okay, now here's the driveway where you turn in.
Well, Mr. Wan had said that because it was prompted by the pictures taken by Mr. Gallagher of the McDonald's sign directional right outside the driveway. And I concur, I thought it was a great idea. Well, why don't we proceed, Mr. Clauser? Mr. Wan, you're up.
First of all, I just want to thank the applicant for considering the comments at the last meeting. And I think you see the product, we definitely have a much smaller sign. And in fact, I would just like to correct, there was a lot of testimony about the sign area. The way Damien and I calculate the sign area for such signs that have bigger bases is we just take into consideration the logo. So in fact, your sign is compliant with the sign area requirements of the commercial signs, section 250-52, I guess. The only two variances you need is one for the second freestanding sign, because I spoke to Mr. Clauser, although the plans call it a directory sign, it's truly not a directory sign. We would consider it to be a second freestanding monument sign, and that requires a variance. The other is the setback. I know that the applicant had received an approval for that variance in the past, but it was at a different location. So this would be a new setback variances, but these two, other than these two variances, I don't believe any other variance is required. And thank you for reducing the sign. I think one more discussion Mr. Clauser and I had, and I don't see it in the images, is that the sign was placed on two poles, and Damon and I think that that should be like a filled base instead of the poles, because then it would be considered a pylon sign versus a monument sign. And I believe the applicant has agreed, because I had seen a sketch wherein the base was filled. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, well, it'll be wrapped or filled so that it has that look that you're looking for. Yes.
Sure. I have no further comments. Damien, over to you.
Really not much for me to say. You've addressed it all. I really didn't have much in the way of comments on the application. I think my biggest comment was with regards to the wrap. I know that there's been a concerted effort with all the sign discussions that we've had about moving away from pylon signs in general, with exceptions where appropriate. So I do appreciate that DCH Honda and its team decided to heed a lot of what was asked and what was inquired, and I think they came up with a good product. So I won't beat a dead horse further. I'll just give it back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Mr. Want, just to be clear, you said you want it more filled like a monument sign, not a pylon sign. And Mr. Clauser responded, we'll wrap it. Is that the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. So there's just still two pylons that are wrapped.
Right.
Okay, got it.
You want to see the sign hanging up on two supports, because then it would be a pylon sign. And in the sign ordinance that Damon and I have been working on, we are trying to get away from pylon sign.
Yeah, and it is their identity. I mean, it is Honda's identity too. So I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
And while it may still be technically a pylon sign because that's how it's supported, it will not appear that way. It's going to appear a monument.
Thank you. Mr. Sachs, you have any questions?
No, I'm fine, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clauser, can I go to the board?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Board members, left or right again, any questions for the witness or anything you want to bring up? Mr. Scogno.
Yes, I do have a question. The construction, will that be in the parking lot in that corner, or are you going to go onto the grass area?
It's a grassed area. Yeah, it's currently on the pavement.
So you're closer to the power line, the pole right there. There's a major power line there.
Oh, it would be well below, 11 feet would be well below any
Back.
electric line, but it's also, you know, the electric line isn't on our property, whereas the sign is on our property. So
Yeah.
we have some room there.
And then you have a number of trees over there.
Yep, it's clear of that as well.
Clear of
We
the trees
very
also?
we very carefully placed it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Scogno? You good? Okay, Ms. Kilduff,
No, I'm fine.
Mr. Dewhurst,
No.
Vice Chair Walker,
No questions.
Mr. Stoner,
No questions.
and Mr. Psychowski.
No questions.
All right, I think you guys did a great job on this. Can I go to the public on this, Peter?
Please do.
Okay. I'm going to open the public portion on this matter. This is 45-2020Z. If I said 46 before, I was reading smaller print. It's 45-2020Z. It's DCH Investments doing business as the Honda dealer, 955 Route 9 North. This is now just for 2C variances. If you want to comment on this question, there's phone numbers in front of you on your screen. Please call now, and we will allow you to comment or ask questions concerning this application. Do we have anybody waiting at present, Ms. Solana?
No hands.
No hands raised.
Okay. We'll give it a minute, and we'll go back to you, Mr. Clauser, okay?
Okay.
No raised hands.
Mr. Sachs, your opinion, we can go?
Larry?
Yes, we can. I'm sorry, I was muted. Yep, we're good.
Okay, we're going to close the public portion. No one has called in. We're back to you, Mr. Clauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we've often done with this board, we've had an opportunity to work together to resolve both the applicant's issues and the board's concerns. And we presented to you a plan which I believe is now superior as a result of that. And I would ask if the board would act favorably on it and grant the variance relief.
Thank you, Mr. Clauser, and to mimic Ms. Swan's word, thank you very much for working with the board and their suggestions. And it looks like you got a good product, and I wish you luck on the vote. Mr. Sachs, this is 2C variances, right? One for the
Yes.
setback and one for two freestanding signs.
Correct.
Can we take them together?
Yes.
Okay. Board members, absent any questions, does someone want to move the 2Cs, one for setback, one for the two freestanding signs?
I'll move it. Motion. Walker.
Vice Chairman Walker, is there a second?
Second, Scogno?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Geldof?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes. Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, thank you very much for all your efforts, Mr. Clauser.
Thank you.
We
Have a
have
good
a
evening.
resolution?
Thank you.
No.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll have one for the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Witnesses.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Oh, you too.
Debbie, do you need a quick break? 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
All right,
Okay.
two's going to be 5, okay? For those watching at home, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. The time right now is 8:43. We'll be back on at 8:48. Please silence, mute yourself, and take your video down. 8:48. Debbie, are you back yet?
There she-
Yes.
Just waiting for the other board members, Mr. Alfieri.
That would help.
So Dewhurst, you back yet? Mr. Psychowski? Okay.
Mr.
Vice Chairman Walker?
He's here.
Okay, very good. It looks like we have everybody. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Ms. Silverman, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dewhurst,
Here.
Ms. Keldorf,
Here.
Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Mr. Walker,
Here.
Mr. Psychowski, Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Sachs,
Here.
Mrs. Shapiro. Ms. Sawant,
Here.
Mr. Hart,
Here.
Ms. Drum,
Here.
and myself, Kim Silverman.
Okay, this brings us to our final two applications of the evening. If you're watching at home, as I spoke earlier, these are going to be larger applications. They're requiring site plans. I'm going to call the first one into the record. It's 44-2020Z. It's 2G Manzo LLC. It's in the SD3 zone on Manzo Boulevard. This is for a warehouse with loading areas and office areas. Major site plan and preliminary and final with D variance. Salvatore Alfieri Esquire representing the applicant. Mr. Alfieri.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As the chairman indicated, Salvatore Alfieri, Cleary, Giacobbe, Alfieri, and Jacobs on behalf of the applicant. This is a application for preliminary and final site plan approval and D and C variance relief with various design waivers. We're here before the board not because the warehouse is a D variance. The warehouse is a permitted use, but we do have FAR relief, D4 relief, and that is why we're before the zoning board. We have three witnesses we intend to call: our engineer, a traffic engineer, and a planner. We also have on the call or meeting an architect and representatives of the applicant who will be prepared to answer questions or provide testimony if the chair or board members or the members of the public require any comment from them. Having said that, I'd like to call our first witness, our civil engineer, William Parkhill.
Mr. Parkhill, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, and professional affiliation for the record.
Sure. First name William, middle initial J, his last name Parkhill, Parkhill. I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with Mid-Atlantic Engineering Partners, and I've been retained by the applicant for this project.
Thank you.
Parkhill, you've testified before boards in the state of New Jersey before, and how about this board?
I have testified in front of numerous boards throughout the state of New Jersey. I had not had the pleasure of testifying in front of this board previously.
Thank you. We look forward to your testimony. We accept your expertise.
Mr. Parkhill, your office prepared the preliminary final site plan application that's been submitted in support of this application. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And would you describe for the board generally where this property is located and how it is currently being used and or occupied?
Sure. Am I able to screen share to Google Earth or anything like that at this meeting?
Do you have something different than what I was given from Mr. Alfieri?
No, not at the moment. I was going to open up Google Earth, but I can start with this if that's preferred.
Yeah, but Whatever we
Sure.
submit in advance, we can work off of for now.
Okay, no problem. So the subject site fronts on Manzo Boulevard. Manzo Boulevard is a 60-foot private right-of-way that comes off of Old Waterworks Road. Looking at the screen, north being to the right, south being to the left. So directly to the south of our site is an intersection of Manzo Boulevard and Old Waterworks Road. Old Waterworks Road is located roughly about a mile from the intersection of Perrine and Route 9, just to give everybody sort of some sense of geography of where we are located here. Manzo Boulevard is currently a dead end and terminates along the frontage of our property, as can be seen on the screen here.
And would you describe for the board, the property is currently vacant, is that correct?
That is correct. The property
And
is currently completely vacant.
are there any wetlands or other constraints that impact the property currently?
Sure. To the rear of the property, there are existing wetlands and a section of a regulated flood hazard area to the sort of northeast corner of our site. We do have an LOI for the site, and we'll obtain any necessary NJDEP approvals for the development of this project.
And would you describe for the board what we're proposing this evening?
Sure. The proposal for the subject property is a 142,100 square foot warehouse facility. To support that warehouse, there are 72 parking spaces proposed along Manzo Boulevard. And on the north and south end of the building are loading bays. For the warehouse, there's a total of 32 loading bays proposed.
And there's also a small area of proposed within the 142,000 square feet. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's 133,650 square feet of warehouse and 8,450 square feet of office proposed.
The site will be serviced by which utilities?
The site will be serviced by public water, public sewer, and your electric and gas as needed for the site. In the north end of the site actually are the proposed stormwater management facilities. Also, there's a proposed infiltration basin, and then there's an existing detention basin that's actually the middle of the site that's getting relocated to the north end of the site currently.
The stormwater management complies with will comply with township regulations and stormwater management regulations?
That is correct.
How about site lighting and landscaping? Can you describe what's being proposed?
Sure. So site lighting brings us, I think, to one of the waivers we're requesting. This site is proposed to be lit by pole-mounted fixtures with a height of 30 feet, where the maximum permitted height in the zone, I believe, is 18 feet. Double checking my notes. That's correct, 18 feet. From a landscaping standpoint, there were several waivers that were identified in the board's professional reports, and I'll go into each one with a little bit of detail, but I think with the overriding idea that the applicant's goal is to try to address and eliminate any of those waivers that are possible sort of within the physical constraints of the site. The first design waiver identified regarding landscape was landscape islands in the parking. Currently, the front parking lot along Manzo Boulevard is 72 parking spaces, where 70 are required. There are no landscaped islands proposed to break up those 72 parking spaces. The ordinance requires that after you get to 20 spaces, you need one landscape island for every 10 spaces. So we would, utilizing sort of the green area adjacent to our first entrance on the south side of our site, spread out our parking spaces and seek to install landscape islands for every 10 spaces so that we can comply with that requirement and not request that waiver. The next landscaping waiver identified was to install 2 shrubs and 1 shade or ornamental tree for every 1,000 square feet of non-residential space. This is 142,000 square feet of space. That would result in the need for roughly 142 ornamental trees and 284 shrubs. Again, we are requesting that waiver, not necessarily to build what's shown on the plans now, but to have the flexibility to work with the board's professionals and add as much landscaping, shrubs and trees as we can to get as close to that goal as the site will physically allow us to. I think our concern with not requesting that waiver is that we're just physically going to run out of room to get those trees and those shrubs to fit. So we are requesting the board grant that waiver. And then the other 2 waivers, again, both related to landscaping. The one is for 5 feet planting for wherever parking areas abut property lines. I think the board's professionals in their one letter did sort of acknowledge that at the rear of our property opposite Manzo Boulevard, there's existing vegetation, existing wetlands. We may have trouble trying to get that 5 feet of landscaped area planted there with, the differentiating grades between our site and the wetlands. So again, we will work with your professionals and try to supplement our landscaping plan to their satisfaction, but are requesting that waiver be granted as well. And the final landscape waiver is regarding no less than 20% of the gross parking area of any parking lot be landscaped. I think to the same sort of testimony I've just provided, to the extent that we're physically able to do that, we will comply with that. But again, ask the board to grant that waiver to leave the room to work with the professionals and try to, provide as much landscaping as possible.
While we're on the subject of waivers, there are a couple of others that we're seeking relief for. We may as well cover those now, and then we can get back to the rest of the testimony. And the waivers are set forth in more detail on the planner engineer report dated November 5th on page 5. So, Bill, you want to cover the last few that we did not actually discuss?
Yeah, the loading stall size, we have looked at our plans and we intend to increase the depth of our loading bays from 55 feet to 60 feet to comply with that. We think that we still have adequate maneuvering area to strike those as such and comply with that requirement. Therefore, that waiver is not required. The next one going right down the list is the landscape island, which was the first one I touched on. I think the other 3 landscaping, or the other 4 landscaping ones I've touched on. The next one would be the vertical retaining wall within the rain garden. The township's ordinance requires no steeper than 3-to-1 side slopes for a basin. On the south side of our development, we have a small rain garden adjacent to the parking lot to treat that water for water quality. And that rain garden is up against a retaining wall, which then, sort of creates a 1-to-1 side slope. Therefore, that design waiver is requested there. And then the final waiver is the lighting mounting height, which I spoke of initially. And then the final design waiver was identified in ERI's traffic report, which related to the parking stall size. The township ordinance requires 10 by 20 parking spaces. We are providing 9 by 18 parking spaces. 9 by 18 are standard, parking space size. We envision the use of this building to be as a warehouse, and as such, those parking spaces would be used by employee. They would not be high turnover. They're not, typical of a retail, establishment or something like that, where you would have cars constantly in and out of those. So we think that the 9 by 18 size is sufficient.
Is the applicant proposing a site identification sign, and if so, will it conform with the ordinance?
We are proposing a site identification sign at the southern entrance, and it will conform with the ordinance.
There are various professional reports that have been issued, and I'm going to ask you about each one in order. other than to comment whether we're going to comply or not with all the comments, if there's some specific comment that you think we need to discuss and or we need relief from, I'd ask you to identify them. The first one we received was from the Bureau of Fire Prevention. It was dated October 20th. Have you had an opportunity to review that report?
I have.
And can we address all of those comments to the satisfaction of the Fire Bureau?
Yes, we agree to comply with all those comments.
The second was from the Conservation Officer, Mr. Lavallo. His report was dated November 2nd. Again, can we address all of those comments?
Yes, we can.
Traffic, you mentioned, and we can touch on that. There is a section of the traffic report that relates to site plan. That traffic report is dated October 22nd, and the site plan comments are reflected on page 4 and actually page 4. Again, can you address all of those comments?
We can, and I find it prudent to back up to page 3 of this letter where the traffic engineer or traffic review consultant identifies variances and waivers. Item number 3 was related to parking stall size, which I addressed. Item number 4, where it talks about a 10-foot backup area, we will revise our plan and not request that waiver. Item number 5, same thing, we'll revise our plan to comply and not request that waiver. Item number 6 is related to the parking islands that I mentioned earlier in my testimony, and again, will not request that waiver, and same thing with item number 7. We will make revisions necessary to not need those identified waivers.
Okay, and then back to page 4, those 10 or so site plan comments, you'll address those as well?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, and then the last report, which we received from Vina and Nicole, dated November 5th, has several pages of comments, and there is one specific, before we talk about the variances, there's one specific comment which is reflected in item H, paragraph 1D, that we discussed today, and I believe you want to put a little testimony on as to how we're going to address the suggestions raised by the professionals.
Sure. So item D refers to the location of the rear of the building in relation to the rear setback and the existing wetlands. Currently, the way that the plan is drawn, the rear of the building is about 51.5 feet from the property line, and there's a retaining wall between about 6 to 8 feet off the building, which encroaches in that rear yard setback as identified by the board's planner. That creates a rear.
Bill?
Yep.
Vina, can you put the plan up, please, so in case we need to see what he's talking about?
Just bear with me for a second. I'm unable to share my screen. Just bear with me 2 minutes.
Thank you, Vina. And sorry, Bill, I'm sorry. Please continue.
No problem. So the area that we are referring to is the rear of the building, sort of opposite Manzo Boulevard. It would be the bottom of the screen here. And the identified variance is that there's a retaining wall of varying heights along that back property line that encroaches within the 50-foot rear yard setback. Our proposal that I want to talk about here is to basically reduce the depth of the building by 10 feet. If you can imagine taking that whole rear building line and shifting it toward the top of the page 10 feet and pulling our retaining wall and the back of our building 10 feet closer to Manzo Boulevard, making our building footprint area smaller. It would take our 142,100 square foot building footprint and reduce it to 136,300 square feet. It would reduce our loading bays by 1 on each side, so it would result in 30 loading bays. In that 136,300 square feet, what we would propose is to go to 133,300 square feet of warehouse, and then reduce our office space from 8,450 to 6,000 square feet. In order to do that, the office space would actually just become 3,000 square feet on the ground floor, and then like a mezzanine, right above that, like a 2-story office space right in the front. It would not increase the height of the building. It would all be done interior to the sort of warehouse space. But what that does is it reduces our overall office area from 8,400 to 6,000 square feet. That also reduces our parking requirement from 72 spaces or from 70 spaces to 57 spaces. I think that would help toward a lot of the landscaping comments that we talked about early on and getting more green into the front of this building. From the owner's standpoint, that size office space is probably a little more appropriate for this size building. I think 8,400 square feet is probably a little on the big side. So, what that does is it pulls the whole back of the project 10 feet farther from the wetlands, pulls that retaining wall out of that rear yard setback and eliminates that variance. For the record, for clarification, the net, change would be a 139,300 square foot building area total, where the current plan shows 142,100 square feet. So that reduces, one of the, the reason that we're at this board is for a floor area ratio variance. And I think that comment in the planner's review letter indicated that maybe making this building a little bit smaller would reduce the ask of that. And it reduces it from 0.35 to 0.338. It's a slight reduction where 0.25 is the maximum permitted floor area ratio.
Now, there are several other C variances that are required for this design. And would you identify those variances, please?
Sure. The first one is the front yard setback. The required front yard setback is 75 feet. The majority of our building along Manzo Boulevard does comply with the 75 feet, with the exception of the portion of our building that is toward the end of Manzo Boulevard where the cul-de-sac exists. At that location, the property line for Manzo Boulevard follows that cul-de-sac and reduces the front yard setback in that location to 16.8 feet. And then the other C variance is landscaping around the trash enclosures. Currently provided, the building envisions the potential of having two separate tenants, one on the right, one on the left. And as such, we've shown trash compactors on both ends of the building. That was one of the questions, was why there were two. If it did end up being a single tenant building, we would envision possibly only being one, but that's really user driven. Because location of those, where they are is they're located in the sort of loading zones at the ends of these buildings, and there is no landscaping provided around them. So we need a variance for landscaping around the trash compactors.
And the variance identified in the reports for the rear yard setback will now be eliminated based upon the reduction of the size of the building. Is that correct?
Yes, that is what we are proposing.
Now back to the November 4th report from the planner and engineer. Have you had an opportunity to review the various technical comments contained within the report and are in the position to state that we would address all the comments to the satisfaction of those professionals?
That is correct.
That's all we have of the engineer, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Alfieri. Ms. Shapiro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I heard was that the applicant's engineer is going to address all the technical comments in the engineering section. But there's just a couple of things that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. One being that there is currently an easement area that Mr. Parkhill had mentioned, that is for drainage, that runs basically in the center of where the building is. That's going to be relocated based on the plan with a stormwater facility that's located toward the north side of the property, closer to where that flood hazard area is. So certainly that existing easement would have to be extinguished. As part of my review memo, I just want to highlight that before, obviously, as that description of the extinguishing is developed, and then also the new easement area is developed, we would need to extinguish that easement in front of council, at one of those, at one of our council meetings. So I just want to bring that up to the applicant's attention before filing that should occur. We actually, I want to say a couple of months ago, it's more like a year ago, around this time, for Manzo, we actually extinguished several other easements that was recorded based on an earlier application that was approved by the board. This particular one was in front of our planning board. I believe it was for Transco, and it was, extinguished as part of another application. In our master plan, Manzo Boulevard was to loop around. It is not going to do that going forward. So the intent is it's private. Any easements warranted would be private in nature, and the township would have no need to be accompanied on any of the easements. So the runoff that's going to be captured in this drainage easement from Manzo Boulevard, a private roadway, would not require the township to get involved in that. So we wouldn't need to be named on that easement as somebody that would need to have access. So I just wanted to bring up that point. I also want to talk about stormwater management. There's a lot going on this property for stormwater management. Certainly we reviewed it. Our regulations for stormwater management mimic that of NJDEP. And you could see that there's a lot of comments underneath environmental and stormwater management. The application, if it was solely stormwater management and no freshwater wetlands or flood hazard area application in front of DEP, we would be the sole reviewers on that stormwater management. But I just want the board to know, in addition to us reviewing it, because there is a freshwater wetlands permit and a flood hazard area delineation that they're putting in front of them, that they would be, NJDEP will be reviewing the stormwater calculations as well as my office. So, I'm actually pretty excited that we have no disagreements on any of the comments and that all of them are going to be done. I defer to Deanna though for the traffic. And, one last comment is, when I saw this, the retaining wall in the back, at the highest, it's about 19 feet. So, I quickly flipped through the pages of these plans to look to see, my gosh, how much disturbance are they going to be in for this footing? Because now they're up against that transition area. So I'm glad to hear that they're pushing the building up. That will help them, especially in constructability too. Although temporary disturbance when they're building the wall isn't considered in their transition area averaging that they're trying to do in front of DEP, because that would be temporary in nature. But I like to see that they're moving the building up, and I'd like to see, I know that probably they're, the applicant and the applicant's engineer, in an effort to save money, wanted to come before the board with the plans. And I noticed that it's just a typical detail that they have on the plans for the retaining wall, but just know that, a 19-foot retaining wall would have to be engineered by a licensed professional engineer, submitted to us for review, and then certainly certified in the field by that same engineer. So other than that, I have no other comments, but that, and then I defer to Deanna for traffic.
Thank you, Ms. Shapiro. Mr. Rum, you want to join in now?
Certainly, I will. Yeah, I believe the applicant does have a traffic engineer that will testify on per se traffic. Regarding the site plan, I think I have a few questions and several comments. Regarding the loading area, I know you said you're gonna remove that design waiver, but is your intention is to increase the concrete area to make it 60 feet?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The ID sign, I didn't see it on the plan. I may have missed it. I just want to make sure that's going to be outside the site triangles.
The ID sign will, I'm sorry, you said the ID sign. I didn't quite hear what you said.
That's all right. Yeah, the the identification sign, I guess, is going to be over near the southern access.
Yes, and we will make sure that it is outside of the site triangles.
Okay. Regarding the backup area, I know one of my comments was actually to relocate those few spaces. So my question is, if those spaces are removed, are you still going to need a backup area, and the design waiver, or the removal and the design waiver?
I think if we have spaces in that orientation where that backup area is needed, we will increase that. But I think, as a reduction in our office square footage and building square footage and, reduction in the parking requirement, if we can eliminate that requirement or that need, we will. And we're happy to work with your office and make sure that, that's satisfied. Either if we need it, we address it, or if it's that needs eliminated.
All right, that's good. And my last one was on page 4. We had some recommendations to increase the width of the southern access to 36 feet and kind of get rid of the jog on northern coming from the loading area, which, because we requested, that actually kicks you into 2 more design waivers. I just wanted the board to realize that, because the maximum width for the southern driveway per the ordinance is 30. We were requesting 36. And I believe which that waiver is 250 A, F, and 2. Actually, both of them, it's the same section. So just more for the board and Mr. Sachs. So, if you comply with our letter, you're gonna need another design waiver.
Okay.
And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Drum. Ms. Swan?
Yes, good evening. When I was preparing for this meeting, I had actually thought I would have to fight for the reduction in the size of the building. So I'm a little disappointed, but I'm happy that the applicant has shrunk, shrunk the size of the building. So you took me on that. One comment I have is there is an additional waiver actually for the sign setback, because the sign is fully compliant. However, section 250-52G5 requires a 10-foot setback, sign setback from the street right of way and 20 feet from the pavement. So you would require a variance on that. And then comment E, page 6, the self-contained trash compactors. There was a note that said it's optional, and I didn't know what that meant. So could somebody explain what that optional was?
Sure. I think the intention was that, there's a potential of having 2 tenants in this building. So, leaving the option of having either 2 compactors or only 1 if it's a single tenant building. So that was the only reason it was listed as optional.
Sure. And I would just suggest that should the board act favorably on this application, the applicant work with our office for the landscaping plan and try to eliminate as many waivers as we can. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Mr. Want. Mr. Fire Marshal Hart, I have your report too. Do you want to join in?
Yes, thank you, Jim. I'm always glad to hear that they want to give me everything that's on my memo. Are we going to get an updated drawing showing everything that's on my memo?
Yes.
Only because I'm hearing so many different things from the other professionals concerns me when I get left out. With the parking areas near the fire department connections, but you're going to resubmit other drawings with everybody's comments, and that should show all that?
Yes, assuming this were approved as part of resolution compliance, we would have to submit a revised plan to address all the comments contained within all the reports and then any additional conditions or comments that are raised this evening.
Okay. The dumpsters or compactors, if it's two tenants, is it going to be mandated that they have compactors? Or is it up to the tenant?
Bill, do you
I
consider
think,
that?
yeah, I can answer that. I think that it's going to be up to the building operator, and if it's a single owner and they're leasing space and they work out a way that they share one compactor, I think that it's, you know, sort of the building owner's operation and duty to make sure the trash is handled appropriately.
But
For the building in its entirety.
But the applicant would stipulate that there will be at least a compactor within the building.
Doesn't really show any other space to put containers or any type of garbage container besides a compactor. I just don't want to have a problem after it opens and then the one tenant becomes two tenants and they don't want to put a big compactor in. What do we do then? You're going to have dumpsters sitting in the middle of the parking garage. Can we make that, Larry, can we make that like a stipulation if two tenants?
Absolutely. Mr. Alfieri, would your client be amenable to that?
Yes, we would stipulate that the compactors are mandated. If we have two tenants, we'll have two compactors.
I mean, like it's a pretty big building, 15 loading docks. There's going to be a lot of garbage for being employed.
Okay. So we'll have that as a condition.
Yes.
All right. So you're saying that the drawings won't come out unless you're approved? Is that what? An update right now, is it going to happen unless it's approved?
Well, that's up to the board in the end. Typically, we seek approval and then address all the conditions and comments. That's typically how we do it, but it's the board's call.
That's where we run into a problem on site. Because that happens, the drawing originally that's leaving the plan and the zoning board has nothing on it. When your contractors start building your site, they don't have an updated one, or neither do I, because I don't get construction permits. I don't get those plans at all. And then it becomes a big problem for me to make sure that everything that I was agreed to at a hearing like today is being met, even though the contractors that are building it have no idea what I'm talking about. That's
I'm sorry. I mean, I guess the right way to answer that is that as part of resolution compliance, normally the board or town professionals have to sign off on the final plan. We have no issue copying you and requiring your sign off on the final plan before any building permits are issued.
Okay.
Tom, typically what we've been doing, and Dave in my office, he reaches out to you just to make sure, or even to Fire Marshal Garrity to see if their comments have been addressed on what we've gotten. We take a cursory look based on your comments and then we address them. I think what you're seeing in the field is sometimes there's field changes, or sometimes we're not privy to details on the architectural drawings of where like their FDC connections are. And then the striping does change, but that is more of a field condition change than something that was approved by the board. And I think that's probably where you're getting, but what I'm going to do is once I go back to the office tomorrow, I'll tell Dave that, going forward, we should make sure that there's, detailed coordination between my office and yours so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Well, I agree with you that lately we've been getting those resolution compliance letters to agree that, yes, they meet what was agreed to. But there's been 3 or 4 lately that haven't even come close to meeting our compliance, but yet there was the change. And the change, nobody knew about. So Larry, if this is normal, then, I just get worried that when nothing's in writing, except for the transcript, which is a wonderful thing because I use it every time. And I go to the site with the transcript and say, you missed all this. And I don't want to have to stop jobs because of a a glitch somewhere.
No, I understand. So listen, obviously, as long as your comments are accepted by the applicant, we're going to put that condition in about the compactors. But I guess, just, and I'm sure, I know Nicole does it the correct way in terms of notifying both yourself and Mr. Garrity, but, we just got to make sure that, these are all addressed during resolution compliance.
That's all I have.
And Mr. Chair, we will, when we resubmit, if the board wants us to, we could submit a set directly to the fire officials. They see it directly as well. Although I'm sure Nicole or Vina will send it to him as well also.
I think as long as he gets to see it beforehand is probably the right way to do this.
Okay, Jimmy, thank you. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Fire Marshal. Is Mr. Lavallo here tonight? I asked that earlier.
I had texted him. He's not, but if you want, I can have him chime in.
Well, I'm reading this, there's a lot of disturbance on removal of trees. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Okay.
I think they went on the record and they said they'll do everything he said, but his report was rather detailed.
Okay, give me two minutes and I'll have him on.
Unless, Mr. Alfieri, you want to comment some other way on that?
No, I'm not sure what more we can do. We would agree to address the comments to his satisfaction. So I'm not sure what more we can say.
Okay, I'd just like him to go on the record then.
That's fine.
Okay. Meanwhile, who did I miss? Anybody else? Mr. Sachs, did you have anything?
No, I'm fine.
We go to the board now. Board members of this witness, Mr. Parkhills. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Scogno?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay, Ms. Kilduff?
Not at this time.
Okay, Mr. Dewhurst?
No, sir.
Vice Chair Walker?
I have a question. Will the, on the exit and entrance, the two exit and entrances, will they have gates? So when the place is closed, you can't get in there?
There are not gates proposed here, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stoner?
No questions.
Mr. Psychowski, you have anything at this point?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Alfieri, you have another witness, right? Why don't you get started with the other witness? We'll see if we can contact Mr. Lavallo, okay?
Sure. Our next witness is our traffic engineer, Joseph Fissinger. Mr. Fissinger, are you on?
Yep, I see him. Yep. Mr. Fissinger, please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Sure. It's Joseph Fishinger, Fishinger. I'm the Director of Traffic Engineering with Brightview Engineering, 651 Old Mount Pleasant Avenue, Livingston, New Jersey.
Thank you.
We'd request that credentials be accepted by the traffic expert, Mr. Chair.
I haven't heard any yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you.
You didn't say anything. I was waiting.
Apologies.
I thought you did. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Very briefly, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Rutgers University, licensed professional engineer in New Jersey, as well as a certified professional traffic operations engineer. Testified in front of probably 50 boards across the state, although I haven't been in front of this one yet.
Okay, we're looking forward to hearing you as well. We'll accept your credentials and your expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And your office prepared the traffic impact study dated June 15th of 2020. Is that correct?
That's right.
Would you summarize for the board what you did to conduct that study and then what the conclusions that you reached as a result of this the study?
Sure. I'll try and keep this brief. I'm sure you've heard a lot of the generics many times before. We did our traffic counts at the intersection of Old Waterworks Road and Manzo Boulevard on Thursday, March 12th from 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon. We got them in just before everything with COVID started happening. Peak hours were 7:45 to 8:45 in the morning and 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. The short version is we ran the typical level of service calculations for the intersection It's operating at an A level of service today, very good levels of service, minimal delays. With the increase of some background growth, which we forecast 3 years into the future, it still operates at an A. And then once we added on the traffic from our site, which generates approximately 46 trips in the morning peak hour and 44 trips in the evening peak hour, the worst change is the level of service drops by 2 seconds, just moving over from an A to a B. There were a couple of comments in Deanna's letter I wanted to address. The first question was whether or not the asphalt plant was in operation. To the best of our knowledge, it was, although this was done in March before COVID happened, so I doubt they were at full operation. As far as I think comment 9 in her memo was regarding heavy vehicle percentages. What I did was a sensitivity analysis. I went into the analysis we did and pushed the heavy vehicle percentage up from the 2% that we typically use up to 99%, and it didn't change the results significantly. Everything was still at a level of service B or better in the full build condition. And then I believe the question number 10 was regarding anticipated number of trucks. We don't have tenants for this site, so we can't say specifically to a particular user. However, we typically experience on a warehouse site between 10 and 20% of the traffic is truck related, and most of that occurs outside of the commuter peak hours. Tractor trailers are not trying to move around right at rush hour. They want to get in outside of rush hour, because every minute they're sitting in traffic is a minute they're not making money. That was all I have as far as direct. Sal, I don't know if you had any.
Yes, I have a follow-up. You heard the testimony about the waiver we're asking for the size of the parking stalls of 9 by 18. From a traffic professional point of view, do you agree that 9 by 18 are appropriate for this type of use?
Yes, as Bill had mentioned earlier, 9 by 18s are standard in a lot of conditions, and on a site like this, we're not expecting very many visitors or much turnover, and a 9 by 18 space is typical for this type of application.
And the proposed access points will operate safely and efficiently?
Yes, we did take a look at those as well, and they will operate at similar or better levels of service than what I stated for the intersection at Old Waterworks Road.
Okay. That's all we have for traffic, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Drum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The traffic study that Joe went through was pretty standard. The board's probably aware this is, a large industrial area. There is quite a bit of truck traffic that's out there now. We recently did some traffic data collection for another project for Old Bridge. And, the single units, tractor trailers, you're talking about 30% of traffic that's out here that would be considered, larger trucks. So, this type of development is pretty much going to be compatible to what you already see out there. I guess I only have 2 questions for Joe, and maybe it's not Joe, but maybe Mr. Parkhill. Is the site distance coming out of the southern entrance? Because you have the horizontal curve, heading up to Old Waterworks Road. I guess my question is do we know if there has to be any clearing on the adjacent lot within the right of way or on the lot itself? Now my
Bill, hopefully you can answer that question.
Mr. Parkhill? You may have stepped away. Could we go on to something else?
No,
here he is.
I'm here. I apologize. Just had to unmute.
Yeah, one of my concerns is the sight lines coming out of the southern entrance because of the horizontal curve. And I guess my question, you may not know right now, is do you know if there's going to need any clearing within the right of way or on the property itself, the adjacent property, which is lot 13.25?
Yeah, I do not know that answer offhand right at the moment.
it's something we can look through, you know, if the application is approved through conformance.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless
Thank
there's
you.
specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Drum. Mr. Park, you'll stand by a second. Mr. Alfieri, Mr. Lavallo is now on. I see the township arbiter. Is it okay if I ask him concerning Mr. Parkill's testimony?
Oh, please do, please.
Okay. Gary, they went on the record saying that they can comply or will comply with all of the areas that you touched on in your report, which I thought was rather extensive, and I thought might need some explanation. But is that go okay with you?
Yes, that would work. There wasn't much vegetation on site.
Okay.
But the little there is, I need addressed. That's all.
Okay, and obviously they say they're willing to do that. So
that's great.
You have any other areas that you want the board to know about tonight?
For that site, just the landscaping. I'm not sure since I'm out of town, but if the planner or had addressed the landscaping issues, I had a few concerns regarding the lack of vegetation, maybe some more landscaping to be enhanced, especially street trees along the entrance coming in all the way down the length of the property, because the cul-de-sac ends, but the property continues. And I imagine in the future that will be developed as well. And I wanted to have street trees the way the ordinance requires it down the entire length. And there's nothing around the detention basins. That needs to be enhanced as well. But the landscape issues are in my report.
Okay, they did say that, you know, they do have some tight constraints there. What you weren't privy to was they've agreed to move the building in 10 feet. So they're lessening the space in the rear. Now, I know you're talking about the front, but they also said they'd be certainly be willing to work with art professionals in order to put in what landscape they could fit in.
Okay, that sounds fine.
Okay, did I misquote anything, Mr. Alfieri?
No, that's 100% correct. I was going to say we would also be glad to meet with Mr. Lavallo when we come up with the final landscape plan to get his sign off.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lavallo, anything else you want to tell the board tonight?
Nope, that wraps it up.
Thank you for checking in with us. I did read your report and I just wanted you to weigh in on it.
That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Fishinger, you had finished your direct, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I went to, I have to go to, I went Mr. Drum, Ms. Shapiro, you have anything for Mr. Fishinger?
No, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Sawant?
No.
No, okay. Fire Marshal, you're still here. You don't have anything, do you?
No, James, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay, let me go, Mr. Sachs.
No, I'm fine, Mr. Sullivan.
Let me go to the board, Mr. Scogno.
No, sir, not at this time.
Mr. Gilduff.
Nope, I'm good.
Mr. Dewhurst.
No questions at this time.
Vice Chair Walker.
No questions.
Mr. Stoner.
No question at this time.
Thanks. And Mr. Psychowski.
No questions. Thank you.
Back to you, Counselor.
All right, last witness we have is our planner. I'm not sure which one is. We had one planner who was in another meeting, but I know Mr. Leff is on. Mr. Leff, are you the one testifying?
I am tonight. Looks like I
Okay.
win.
Okay, lucky us.
All right, Mr. Left, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
My name is Brian Leff. Last name is spelled L-E-F-F. I'm currently the president of BML Studio in Barnegat, New Jersey.
And Mr.
Licensed professional planner and landscape architect in the state of New Jersey. And I've testified in front of this board several times.
Yes, he has, and we'll accept him again.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Leff, do you need there was a package of documents that were submitted as part of a planner report. Do you need that displayed in any way to support your testimony?
I do, and if it's possible, I'd like to be able to share my screen because what we have is a PowerPoint. That would be much easier if I could control when it jumps from screen to screen.
I defer to Vina on that one.
I think she was about to do it.
Yeah, Mr. Leff, Ms. Sawant controls the and moderates the meeting, so.
Mr. Leff, we did submit as both a PDF and a PowerPoint. So if it's only the PDF, we could flip the pages as you go.
Yeah, whatever
Okay.
the board's preference is.
All right, there you go. It's up in front of you. You see it?
Yeah, let me just rearrange my screen so I can, yes.
Okay, please continue.
All right, right off the bat, I'd just like to jump into the next slide while I get started here. And I apologize if the slides don't so much go with the testimony. I was hoping to be able to manage it. Anyway, we're here. The subject tract is known as Block 5001, Lot 13.24, as shown on the Old Bridge Township tax map. The tract is located in the northern portion of the town near the Sayreville border. The tract contains approximately 9.46 acres, is undeveloped, and is situated along the Manzo Boulevard near the intersection of Old Waterworks Road. Manzo Boulevard is a private roadway. Surrounding uses are industrial in nature. They include an asphalt plant across the street, and also the Transco facility, which is also across Manzo Boulevard to the west. The Kennedy International Building is located nearby on Old Waterworks Road. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, this slide just shows the existing zoning, and the subject tract is located within the SD3 Special Development Zoning District, where warehousing is a permitted use. Now, although the use is permitted, the applicant is seeking relief from the Old Bridge Land Use Ordinance for an FAR of 0.35, which, as you've heard the testimony, the building's actually getting a little smaller, and I believe the new number is 0.338 for FAR is now being proposed, whereas a maximum of 0.25 is permitted. We're also seeking a variance for a front yard setback where 16.8 feet is proposed to the cul-de-sac bulb along Manzo Boulevard and 75 feet is required. And if we can go to the next slide. Now, when we're looking at the variances, the first thing we want to do is establish that this use that's being proposed is suitable for the site. Now, the tract is roughly rectangular with 1,352 linear feet of frontage along Manzo Boulevard and has a depth of approximately 373 feet for most of the property. It's located directly opposite the Transco facility, as well as a portion of the Stavola asphalt plant. Both of those uses are non-conforming uses in the SD3 zoning district. And this tract is also part of the Runyon redevelopment area. And if we can go to the next slide. Manzo Boulevard was originally intended to extend from Waterworks Road to Cheesequake Road, but it was cut off by a significant drainage way that kind of bisects it. So Manzo Boulevard was then modified to include a cul-de-sac and a turnaround area. The cul-de-sac is the driving force behind the front yard setback variance that's being sought this evening. And if we can go to the next slide. And this slide basically just shows the existing conditions. The tract is currently vacant with some wooded areas in the southern portion of the site. The vegetation within this area consists primarily of small caliper black locust trees and other common volunteer species. The tree type, along with several random mounds in this area, indicate that the area was previously disturbed and potentially used for mining. The middle portion of the site is bisected with a drainage easement extending from Manzo Boulevard to the eastern property line, and the northern tip of the site is bisected by another drainage easement that's approximately 50 feet in width. And the engineer had already testified about these previously. If we could go to the next slide. Now, the warehouse is clearly appropriate for the site, and the applicant is seeking a actually, this slide just shows the current site plan, the way everything is laid out. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. Well, the warehouse use is clearly appropriate for the site. The applicant is seeking a variance to permit an FAR of 0.35, now 0.338, whereas the ordinance permits a maximum of 0.25. With the exception of a portion of the building adjacent to the cul-de-sac, the proposed building fits within the required building setbacks and is in scale with the tract. By nature, warehouse uses dictate more demand for interior space than outdoor improvements such as parking, and that's just the nature of the use. All proposed access to the site will be from Manzo Boulevard, which shares access with only two other uses that are shown on this slide, which are industrial in nature. Manzo Boulevard will not likely be extended anytime in the foreseeable future. So the extent of traffic you see on Manzo Boulevard now is likely to be what you're going to see in the future. The proposed warehouse will, and if we can go to the next slide. The proposed warehouse will establish a foothold for other permitted uses within the SD3 zoning district as compared to the existing conditions. The warehouse would join the nearby Kennedy International facility to encourage more commercial and industrial redevelopment within the Runyon redevelopment area. Given the nature of the surrounding uses and the increased demand for warehouse space driven by the online retail business, the proposed development is logical to include in any redevelopment area plan for the area. Notwithstanding the relief being sought this evening, the proposed development largely complies with the zoning regulations for the SD3 zone. Now, if we can go slowly through some of the next slides, we just want to look at some of the existing conditions on the site. This slide basically shows the nearby Kennedy International headquarters and distribution warehouse, which is near the intersection of Waterworks Road and the road we're on.
Manzo Boulevard.
Yes, I'm drawing a blank, Manzo. Looking at some of the history of this property, and you can see how it was developed. Going back to 1947, you can see the property was largely, the whole area really was largely wooded. Looks like there might have been some farm fields in the area. And we can go to the next slide. And in 1957, there was a dramatic disturbance where you can see the subject tract has been significantly disturbed, but the Stavola tract is still fairly intact. And we can go to the next slide. In 1969, this trend starts to reverse, and you can see that the Stavola tract is more disturbed, and you start to get some revegetation back into the subject tract. Let's go to next. And when you get to 1987, the site starts to take on the way it looks today, with a road that goes through the middle, which is roughly where the drainage easement is now. The revegetation is there. And if we go to the next slide. In 2007, we start the construction of Manzo Boulevard. And you can see the Stavola plan is well underway. The site looks largely like it does today. And the next slide. And then just a year later, it looks like Manzo Boulevard was completed and the cul-de-sac was installed. So the shape of the property somewhat changes. And the next slide. The plan we're talking about provides 72 parking spaces for a warehouse and office uses and loading bays for the trucks. The perimeter of the site will be attractively landscaped, and there are provisions for adequate stormwater management on the property. Next slide. Now this starts to get into the heart of the planning testimony that we're here. The requested FAR variance is considered a D4 variance. The subject site is particularly suited to accommodate the proposed warehouse use. The wide and shallow lot dimensions support the development of a modern warehouse footprint along with appropriate vehicular circulation. The 248-foot deep building envelope adequately accommodates the proposed building with the exception of the irregularity caused by the cul-de-sac. The requested FAR deviation is a function of the use, having a far greater demand for interior space than exterior improvements when compared to other permitted uses within the zone. All other bulk parking and loading standards can be adequately accommodated on the site. The municipal land use law provides several purposes which are intended to guide development throughout the state. Now, some of these purposes are very relevant to this application, such as Purpose A, which is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The applicant is proposing a conforming use that's largely consistent with the zoning regulations for the SD3 zoning district. So this purpose is advanced. Purpose G is to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and open space in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. Now, as a permitted use, the proposed warehouse represents an appropriate use for this site. So it is a variety of use. It adds a warehouse in an appropriate space. Purpose I is to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civil design and arrangement. The subject tract is located along a private dead-end roadway, actually a cul-de-sac so you can turn around, but it does have very limited visibility. The proposed landscape plan will provide for an attractive appearance for the limited views that can be realized. And if we can go to the next slide. In connection with this application, I had an opportunity to review the Old Bridge Township Master Plan Reexamination Report, which is dated September 22nd, 2017, and revised through May 19th, 2020. The master plan identifies the property as being included within the Runyon redevelopment area. Much of this area is undeveloped or underutilized, and this redevelopment area is intended to lay the groundwork for achieving a better jobs to housing ratio. By providing an appropriate sized warehouse, the jobs to housing ratio will be improved. And if we can go to the next slide. Now, under the relevant recommendations of the master plan, there were some notations of previous recommendations that were implemented, such as increasing the floor area ratio for the SD3 and the SD5 special development districts. Now, the grant of the requested FAR variance to accommodate an otherwise conforming warehouse would advance the objective of improving the jobs to housing ratio by dramatically upgrading the productivity and appearance of the site, promoting purposes A, G, and I in the process. The grant of the FAR variance would result in a commercial development for which the site and location are particularly suitable based on the lot location and rectangular configuration, and would create new living wage paying jobs consistent with a central objective of the master plan, which is to increase the jobs to housing ratio. And can we go to the next slide? Part of the litmus test that the board must consider when considering any variance really is the negative impacts of the variance being sought. In this case, you want to look and see there's no substantial adverse impact on public welfare. While the application will advance several purposes of the municipal land use law and the municipal zoning goals, the board must also determine any negative impacts. Tract is surrounded by similar industrial uses. The only impact that would be realized would be the addition of more truck traffic onto Manzo Boulevard. This is really a minimal impact that can be easily accommodated. Any negative impact associated with the removal of the existing vegetation will be offset by the inclusion of an attractive landscape installation. And if we can go to the next slide. The second prong to the negative criteria is that there's no substantial impairment of the zone plan or the ordinance. The board must determine that the grant of the FAR variance will not substantially impair the purpose and intent of the master plan and land development standards of Old Bridge Township. The redevelopment of the subject site represents the first considerable investment on Manzo Boulevard that will reinforce the new Kennedy International Distribution Facility on Old Waterworks Road. The Runyon redevelopment area has not yet been adopted, but general warehousing is already a permitted use in the SD3 zone and would likely be promoted in any redevelopment plan for the area. The purpose of the SD zone is to provide new development opportunities for large-scale service and light manufacturing uses with appropriate supporting facilities. The lot areas and permitted uses are intended to serve the needs of the township as well as the regional population. The FAR relief the FAR relief to enable the proposed warehouse facility that otherwise meets all other bulk requirements except for the front yard setback relief caused by the cul-de-sac will promote this objective of the SD3 zone. If we go to the next slide. And in conclusion, the subject site is part of the Runyon redevelopment area, but a redevelopment plan has not yet been adopted. However, the very new distribution warehouse and headquarters of the Kennedy International facility at the intersection of Manzo Boulevard and Old Waterworks Road has established a model for which a redevelopment plan can be used to promote, and the required FAR relief is a minor deviation of what otherwise is an essentially conforming comparable project. The grant of the FAR variance would advance at least three purposes of zoning and would be consistent with the overreaching objective of the 2017 and 2020 master plan examinations to improve the jobs to housing ratio by making the site productive, active, and attractive to other investment. The only bulk relief required is for the front yard setback of 75 feet, and that's being caused by the cul-de-sac portion of Manzo Boulevard, causing the building to be 16.8 feet from the roadway, whereas if that cul-de-sac did not exist, we would otherwise meet the 75 feet. About 120 feet out of the 580-foot length of the building facade is impacted by this variance, which is only about 20%. The cul-de-sac is clearly a hardship, and the relief being sought has no impact on the zone plan. So in my professional opinion, the relief being sought may be granted without any substantial impact to the zone plan or the zoning ordinance, and may be granted without any negative impacts to the the health, safety, and general welfare. That's it for my direct.
That's all we have from the planner, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Alfieri, and thank you, Mr. Leff. I'm sorry that you were working under conditions without your own technical devices, but we're all trying to make this work, and I appreciate your efforts. But we got the gist of everything you said.
Good. That's the important part.
Ms. Sawant?
I have no comments.
Okay. In that case, Mr. Sachs, you have anything? No?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Scogno?
No, sir.
Ms. Kilduff?
I'm good.
Mr. Dewhurst?
No, sir.
Vice Chair Walker?
No comments.
Mr. Stoner?
None.
And Mr. Psychowski?
Nothing, thank you.
You know, something came to mind when you're talking about that one area where you're going to have a small setback there and where the others meet. It was a similar situation with the Kennedy Enterprises on when we did that on right out on Waterworks Road. They had a very similar situation, and I will obviously that we approved that. Mr. Alfieri, go ahead.
That's all we have, Mr. Chair. We would like you to open to the public, and then I would waive a summary due to the lateness of the hour.
Okay. Thank you, and I'm going to do just that. If you're watching at home, you can see the numbers ahead, in front of you for the virtual zoning board meeting and to call in. I'm going to, at this time,
No raised hand.
I'm going to open the public portion of number 44-2020Z 2G Manzo LLC, located on Manzo Boulevard for a warehouse. If you have any interest in this matter, any comments or questions, please call in now. You can see the phone numbers on the screen in front of you. Okay, we'll wait for approximately a minute.
We have one caller.
Okay.
Phone number ending in 7837.
Caller, could you identify yourself, please? The person who's calling in, could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, I just had it on mute.
Okay.
My name is Joseph Criscolo, Criscuolo, and I live at 24 Harvard Road in the Madison Park section of Old Bridge.
Okay, the board attorney will swear you in, sir, if you're going to testify before the board.
Mr. Criscoli, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. Ms. Criscolo, please state your name, spelling your last name, address for the record.
Joseph Criscolo, Criscuolo, 24 Harvard Road, Parlin, New Jersey, which is the Madison Park section of Old Bridge.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Criscoli, if you want to question or tell the board.
Yeah, well, two items. I think I have an issue with the traffic study. I've been a resident of Old Bridge for 60 years, and a good part of that time in the Madison Park development. I'm all for economic development. I think it's necessary in a town. I am very concerned about the additional truck traffic that is actually going down Perrine Road over there. The traffic professional talked a lot about going down Waterworks Road, but where are they egressing to? Are they going to Bordentown Avenue in Sayreville? Are they going down further down Waterworks Road past Seabergeigie and out to Bordentown Avenue? That turn into Sayreville is a very dangerous curve, and everybody that's lived in the community or in the area knows it as what we call the S-turn. And now you have truck traffic coming into the warehouse property. And when the traffic study was going on, certainly that wasn't at its peak, and nor was the Manzo asphalt plant, nor the container company that also sits over near that side of the town. My issue is naturally what I believe was presented was these trucks were going to go down Waterworks Road. Are these trucks going down to Perrine Road to go out to US 9? Because from that point on, there's a 4-ton weight limit, and there's definitely a need for more signage there. And certainly if they're coming down Bordentown Avenue and making a left onto Cheesequake, there's a 4-ton restriction there. I have to say to you, and I will go on record, Mr. Sachs does work with me. I am the business administrator for the Township of East Brunswick. I sit on their planning board, so I know a little bit about this stuff. My concern certainly is the amount of trucks that accidentally make a left from from Bordentown Road onto Cheesequake, and they realize, oh no, I'm now in a residential development. And there's been times where they go down Ernston Road and go up past the church, and it's a bad situation. So my question is, where are all these trucks going to come in to get to Manzo Boulevard? Is it going to be down Perrine Road? Because I think you need a traffic count there, and I think you need a traffic count when Manzo is in full production, and I think you need a traffic count when the Kennedy building is also in production, because the only way they can go to get there is Perrine Road, legally, is Perrine Road and Waterworks down to Bordentown near the S-turn. So, and I see these trucks coming through the development and making that left all the time, or going to Poor Farm Road. And I know your planner and engineer is well aware of this because she's gotten numerous complaints about that. And I think if you were to approve this application, that the applicant should be required to put additional professional signage, because the signage that is actually now sitting out on the highways is something that was thrown together by the township in the heat of trying to avoid complaints from the residents. But you got to take a look at the traffic there, because there's only one way in and one way out. And if that's your redevelopment area, you're going to have to enhance that traffic circulation.
Mr. Criscola, Mr. Sachs was the board attorney when we approved the Kennedy building. the warehouse building on Old Waterworks Road, and that was one of the areas of concern, and I'm sure he'll recall, as well as I'm pretty sure Nicole was here. I don't know whether Vina was. But one of the concerns was, where was all the traffic going to come from on these shipping containers? Because they were going to come in and they were going to go out. And there was an issue where at Cheesequake in Bordentown, that they wanted signage in order for trucks not to come in that way. So the only other way that they could come in off Bordentown would be to Old Waterworks Road, which is commonly called the S curve. But in fact, it was that most of the traffic was going out of Kennedy organization onto Waterworks Road. So they'd make a right coming out, they go to Perrine, and then they go up to Route 9 to traverse either north or south. I would agree with you that that has gotten more busy. I live off of the Route 34 corridor, so I'm aware of that. I have to cut through there sometimes. But I don't know, unless the state of New Jersey is willing to improve the intersection at Route 9 and Perrine Road, if there's going to be any relief to that. That was redone when Lowe's went in there a number of years, 15 or more years ago. And so people were trying to beat each other to get across the street, cutting each other off so they could go into the Lowe's property. So I'm in agreement with you, and we can hear from Ms. Drum too, if you want, because I was going to ask her about that same situation. But clearly they're not allowed, but you know, whether they operate legally or not is something different. But I'll let Mr. Alfieri make a comment if he wants. I just wanted to throw that in. The board is aware of that, and we did deal with it under a previous application.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, obviously we being whoever visits this site has to comply with all the traffic regulations, the weight standards of the roads. We neither your board nor this applicant can grant that relief. So whatever those regulations are, they have to comply with. We would certainly be glad to work with the town professionals to look at the off-site signage for traffic, at least directional signage. But we have no control over the off-site road designs or signage. Be something that we could work with everyone and make requests, but we can't ultimately change the signage without the approval of either the state or the township.
I agree.
Well, I would.
Mr. Sachs?
No, I would agree also, but I know Mr. Criscola was about to say something, so I didn't want to cut him off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I fully understand, but I want people on the board to recognize that it's just not traffic that's going to go onto Waterworks Road. It's going to flood Perrine Road, and if you try to get from, I drive home from my job in East Brunswick down Bordentown Avenue every day, and that traffic backs up on Bordentown to turn into Manzo Boulevard near Stavola, and it backs up, Mr. Sullivan, if you're going over towards where you live, you could be backed up as far as all the way to Waterworks Road on Perrine some evenings right now. So minimally, what we need to do is to have this applicant provide for off-site signage, not only in Old Bridge, but in Sayreville, on Bordentown Avenue, Cheesequake Road, and Route 9, so these trucks don't come down Poor Farm Road. They're there all the time. And I waited on this call for better part of 2.5 hours, and Mr. Sachs represents my planning board as well. He knows I'm on meetings till 10, 11 o'clock. So I really didn't want to wait 2 hours to make my comments, but minimally, you need to have them put the signage in Sayreville, on Bordentown, on both directions, on Cheesequake Road coming from Sayreville. They can't go straight past the Madison Park Firehouse. They're constantly going that way. They're parked at the Cougar football field trying to turn around because they finally realize there's a weight limit. And likewise, the people that live on Poor Farm Road, they make the right at the Chevy dealer, those trucks, and then they're like, oh no, I'm obviously not going the right way. So minimally, you need to have this applicant put signage all over the place and proper signage, not ones made up by the road department in Old
I agree, but you understand as a business administrator that the applicant has no right to erect signs on either municipal or county or state highways.
You
No,
could ask them
without
for
their
off,
permission.
you can ask them to voluntarily do these off-site improvements for the life, health, and safety of the record of the community.
Well, I appreciate your comment. I'll defer to the attorneys on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Ma'am.
It's okay. If I could just chime in, just so that the board is aware, Deanna Drum, our traffic consultant, has actually been retained by the township to provide assistance on a grants application that we're putting into DOT. As part of that grants application, it's for freight and freight travel. So as part of that, she has come up with improvements necessary for the intersection of Waterworks Road and Perrine Road, as well as roadway improvements along Waterworks Road and Perrine Road. In addition to that, she's been retained by the township to prepare a truck route map. And that's, because any of the roadways that have that 4-ton restriction have to be approved by DOT. When I had done the traffic study, or when we had put together the analysis for Poor Farm Road so that we could bring that in front of council, DOT had reached out to me and said that it is improper to put a 4-ton weight restriction on roadways without either one, doing a traffic study on that roadway, or two, to then create a municipal truck route. And so what we have done is we had, mapped out what was the 4-ton restrictions, which was done prior to my arrival with the township. But we're not done with traffic studies. We're done based on pretty much complaints by the residents. So we're taking those into consideration. We're coming up with a truck route map, so that we could put that in front of DOT for their approval, and so that we could come up with a scheme on how we're not only going to do signage for this particular area, but for the township wide. So Deanna is versed, and you heard Deanna's testimony before, where she had known the percentage of truck traffic within this vicinity, and that's because she had just laid out traffic counters and did that analysis herself. And that was part of one, the freight grant application to DOT, and then two, part of that truck route map that we are creating for approval by DOT. So the signage that you see out there now, which follows MUTCD guidelines, no additional signage would be put up until that truck route map is completed, and DOT has approved it. And then they would approve us putting signage within their right of way. For example, no right turn going Route 9 southbound onto Poor Farm Road. So there's a little bit of homework that we're doing, which does take a little bit of time, extra time when you're in a pandemic and nobody's in the offices at DOT. So
What about the signage on Cheesequake Road and Bordentown?
When you come down Perrine Road and you're traveling towards Waterworks Road, and you want to make a right to get to Cheesequake Road, there is signage there, and I did check. I disagree with you. The same respect, when you're on Bordentown and you make a right on Cheesequake, the signage is there. Now, let me say this: the signage was there, was put up, was maintained when I had done this analysis in front of the council. When I was looking and analyzing Poor Farm Road to put that restriction on, to see if there was the percentage of truck traffic necessary to even put that restriction on there. And it was close to not even being warranted. But we did go ahead and put that signage up. So it was there. Now, we follow MUTCD guidelines, manual for uniform traffic control devices, when we're putting up signs. So if it's not signage that you would like to see up there, we're not in the business of doing or putting up sign clutter. Again, if you see vehicles going down this road that is not permitted, I suggest you call the police department and have them go out and enforce it. But again, we could put up all the signs that we want. It's up to the truck drivers to then, abide by them. Just know that when we did the analysis on Poor Farm Road and we did put that restriction on and we did put that in front of council, we actually reached out to every organization, the heavy hitters that are in that industrial section, and made sure they were aware that none of their truck traffic should be going down Poor Farm Road.
Thank you, Ms. Shapiro. Mr. Criscola, is there anything else you'd like to say to the board?
Well, I applaud the engineering department for applying for the freight grant. I did it last year and I received it for Edgeboro Road, but that's it's not in a residential area. I would just like to say, I think another reevaluation of the signage on Cheesequake Road and Bordentown Avenue in the borough of Sayreville is also warranted, because those trucks are coming right across Cheesequake Road, right across Bordentown Avenue, and right through past the firehouse. And the police department can't be there every day. So I think you need to reevaluate that, and I have spoken to Mr. Shaw about this.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments and for hanging out late with us tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Anytime, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just jump in for 1 second before you go to anything else. Mr. Alfieri, I'm assuming you would agree to work with our staff if they determine that additional signage is required somewhere on township streets, which certainly would then require approval by the governing body. But can you make that representation?
Yes, we can. And we also, there's also a section in ordinance about a transportation pro rata share contribution, which is referred to in the reports. So yes, we would be glad to. If someone can approve the signs, my client can get them installed very quickly.
All right. Thank you.
That's what my client does. Sign improvements, and that kind of works. So it would be very easy for him to do it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Alfieri. Is there any other callers, Ms. Swan?
I don't see any. No hands.
No hands raised.
Okay, we're clear to close the public portion, Mr. Sachs?
Yes.
Okay. Public portion is closed for this evening. That brings us to you. Any final comments from you on this application, Mr. Alfieri? I'm assuming you're going to want to go for a vote, right?
Yeah, we'd like to go for a vote. We've agreed to address every comment that the board professionals have raised, and we think it's a great application consistent with what the intent of this development scheme is for the town, and we'd request a positive vote.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Drum, in fairness, was there anything you wanted to put back on the record after hearing Mr. Criscola?
No, Nicole handled quite a bit. I did go back and look at some of the traffic counts because we did some extensive week-long traffic counts along Perrine, Old Waterworks Road, as well as the intersection. And so if you're on Old Waterworks Road heading towards Perrine, about 90% of that traffic makes that right turn on Perrine Road. That's a really, really heavy, and a lot of it is somewhat comprised of the truck traffic, but it's a very heavy right turn movement. And you go out there and you can see that with that large right turn radius. So most traffic I think is probably complying with the rules and regulations that's out there. Yes, you're probably going to get that scattered truck driver that is going to ignore it. And according to I'm with Nicole, you can put as much signage as you want out there, and working with the local businesses, and we can do as much as we can. But again, those counts do show that it's a pretty significant right turn volume, 90%. And really that's it, unless you have a specific question.
I do not, but I thank you for your commentary as well. Mr. Sachs, we need a FAR on this, a D4, right?
Yeah, it would be a D4, and then there's some bulk variances and design waivers and then preliminary and final.
All right, now, Mr. Alfieri has represented, or his experts have, that it's down to 0.338. Is that okay with the professionals? Do they agree with that? I don't know if anybody got to do the numbers, but we're gonna sit with that number.
Originally it was 0.35.
It was, and now it's going to 0.338.
Right, and they would stipulate that that would be the most it can be under any final design plan.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so board members, it's got to get the use variance before any other variance. So this is for a D4 for a floor area ratio. They've reduced it by, I guess, reducing the size of the building down to 0.338. It was on the record as 0.35, but it's now at 0.338, where 0.25 is the max. Someone in favor of moving the D4?
Motion, Walker.
Is there a second?
Psychowski.
Psychowski seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Kilburg?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. The Cs, Larry, were front yard setback at the one end where it's 16.8, correct?
Yes.
And then I have something around the double tenant building trash compactor for C variance. What was that?
Hold on, let me just look.
Landscaping around the trench compactor.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's what it was.
But it was also a condition that the two compactors were going to be there.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so the two Cs and then design waivers, right?
And we can do them as a block, yeah.
And all the design waivers?
Yeah, you can do the design waivers with the Cs, that's fine.
Okay with you, Mr. Alfieri?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, board, you heard it. Someone want to move the Cs and the design waivers?
I'll move them. Dewhurst?
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Kilda.
Till Duff seconds, roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Kilburg?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. And major site plan preliminary, right?
Yes.
Someone want to move it?
I'll move it. Dewhurst?
All right, I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Kilburg?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner? Mr. Stoner? Ben, are you there? I think we might have lost.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Just went on mute. Sorry about that.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. And then major site plan final, correct?
Yes.
I'll move it.
Second, Walker.
Seconded by Walker. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Ms. Kilburg?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, and Larry Bird is in the background screaming. I think he's in favor of it too. So.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your time.
Mr. Alfieri, thank you and all your professionals for the presentation this evening. I wish everybody a healthy, happy Thanksgiving coming up. Best of luck on the project.
Same to you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
All right. Yes, you as well. Ms. Phillips, Ms. Smith.
A little bit of both.
What's your pleasure? We are at 10:07 and we have 3 minutes.
Well, I will tell you that knowing that you'd be short on time, we have thoroughly prepared, and I feel pretty confident we could get through this in a half an hour if the board would indulge us. This is, at the end of the day, just a 6,000 square foot addition to the existing Gateway Shopping Center.
How many witnesses you have?
We were planning to do two, our site engineer and our planner will be far more brief.
We're quick learners, by the way.
Okay, understood.
I have to check with the professionals and Ms. Silverman. Go ahead, Ms. Silverman, your hand's up.
Debbie,
Oh, and Debbie.
did you need a break?
Just for 2 minutes.
Okay. Debbie, you can do that. Let me just check with Nicole and Vina. Are you guys okay?
I'm good.
Board members, anybody doesn't want to do this, raise your hand. I can see you all. Nope, nobody has, so it looks like you're in luck. Let's take a 2-minute recess. I'd ask everybody to stay in their position. Just let Debbie have a break and to reset up.
If I could ask while we're setting up, if Ms. Sawant is going to be the one to control the exhibits, I can tell her right now which two we need to be pulled up, which will save some time.
Sure, go right ahead before we go on the record. Why not?
Sure. So we'll be needing the aerial and then sheet 6 of our site plan, CS 101, but we'll be starting with the aerial. That way, thank you, I appreciate it. That'll help us speed along.
I don't know
And
if somebody's
Scott,
getting
if you're
hit
there, if you
or
can.
was there an attack? Who's doing that?
Thank God it wasn't mine.
Okay, I know. We're just waiting for Debbie to come back. When she's ready, I'll call this into the record.
And if I could ask Scott quickly, our engineer, to unmute himself and put his video on to get ready. There we go.
I am here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Debbie, you okay?
Yes.
All right. This is the last matter for the evening. This is 46-2020Z, Heritage Old Bridge, Brixmore Old Bridge LLC. This is 1030 US Route 9, commonly known as Gateway Shopping Center. It's a CR zone. It's for demo of a portion of the existing building and construction of a 39,112 seeking preliminary and final site plan with C&D variances. Jennifer Phillips Smith representing for counsel. Ma'am.
Thank you very much. Again, this is Jennifer Phillips Smith. I'm an attorney with Gibbons PC. I'm here on behalf of Heritage Old Bridge LLC, which is now known as Brixmore Old Bridge LLC. I know it's late, so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly with a just brief overview before we turn it over to Scott Quigley, who is our engineer. Most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this property. This is the Gateway Shopping Center, which is located at Block 5000, Lot 3 at 1030 US Route 9. You all know the Gateway Shopping Center. It has the Panera, it has Bubba's, has Marshall's, and the Robert Wood Johnson Fitness Center. It also has Modell's. And as most of you know, Modell's has closed, which is going to leave a vacant anchor tenant space within the shopping center. And being that this is a difficult time for retail, we are fortunate that the applicant is looking to reinvest in the site and will be able to draw a new anchor tenant to be a grocer. To accommodate this, they're looking to take the former Modell's space, combine it with some of the existing smaller spaces next door, remove that part of the building and rebuild it for a net increase of just over 6,450 square feet. Overall, it's a minor addition to the large shopping center. It's going to result in the FAR increasing from 0.25 to 0.26, which means that we are here for a D4 variance for the FAR increase of 1/100th. We also need C variances, particularly one for parking. There's already technically non-compliant parking on the site, not enough parking spaces to meet code. We are increasing the number of parking spaces, but not enough to become fully compliant, and therefore we do seek a variance. We also seek a variance related to the trash enclosures and the screening thereof, which are all in the back, and we'll show where those trash enclosures are as we go through tonight. There are also 4 design waivers that we will be explaining. There's also pre-existing non-conforming facilities and structures out there, the conditions that we are not changing. This shopping center was built many decades ago at a time under different zoning. We are not exacerbating the pre-existing non-conforming conditions that have been set forth in the planners and engineers' letters, but we will note them as we go along. It is our hope that this shopping center has been here for many decades, and that with a small addition and a new anchor tenant, it'll continue to thrive for many decades more. We have provided notice in accordance with the municipal land use law and have provided an affidavit to the board secretary. And with that, I would like to call up our first witness, which is Scott Quigley, our civil engineer from Langen Engineering.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Quigley, if you could please, Mr. Quigley, if you could please raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
His name is Scott Quigley, spelled Quigley. I'm a practicing engineer for nearly 17 years. I have a bachelor's engineering degree from Virginia Tech. I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey, and I've testified before many boards throughout the state.
Looks like his credentials and his expertise.
Thank you very much for accepting Mr. Quigley as an expert in the field of civil engineering. Mr. Quigley, you know, as part of this application that we are seeking preliminary and final major site plan, a D4 variance, C variances, and waivers. Have you prepared the plans that were submitted to the board today?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I'd like to start by referring to the exhibit that we submitted before the hearing, an aerial map. Can you quickly and briefly orient the board to the location of this property and the existing shopping center on it?
Yes, this property is, as Jen said, it's the existing Old Bridge Gateway Shopping Center. It's bound by Ernston Road to the north and Route 9 to the east. The town of Sayreville is directly across Ernston Road from the site. I should say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jen.
And what uses does this site back up to?
The project site backs up to an existing auto zone and landscape company supply area.
Excellent. And is this located in the commercial shopping zone CR?
It is located in the regional commercial shopping zone.
All right. Now I know as part of this shopping center that we are proposing an addition. Can you please go through the proposed site plan showing where the larger footprint of the building would be and some of the other changes that are proposed as part of the site? And for this, I think we'd be referring to sheet CS 101, which was submitted with the site plan package.
Correct. And this looks to be like sheet 4, probably. So we want to be on probably 2 more after this, I would guess. Should be additional plans after this one, I would think, Vina.
There we go.
That will work.
I think that's the right one. That's the master site plan.
This will suffice, I think, for what we're talking about for now. This is, yeah, CS 100 master site plan. So as Jen said, we are taking over the existing Model space and some adjacent retail space, demolishing approximately 32,657 square feet of existing retail space in order to construct a 39,000 square foot grocery store. The proposed construction is to accommodate the operations and loading of the new tenant, the grocery tenant.
And are you also making some changes to the parking that is directly out front of the new anchor tenant?
That is correct. The building is growing by about 6,455 square feet. It is bumping out in the front of the portion of the building, and that will be affecting the front drive across the storefront. And we're also reconfiguring some of the parking in the storefront to try to pick up some additional parking spaces.
And are there other places within the site where you're making site improvements to adjust the parking or the drive aisles?
Yes, on the south end of the site behind the existing retail buildings, we are adding a few additional parking spaces. Directly east of that towards the Pet Boys building and towards Route 9, we are reconfiguring the existing drive aisle, which acts as the truck access portion of the site. And then at the western edge of the site, we are adding some additional parking spaces in the rear, where there's currently some trash facilities that we're going to be relocating as well.
Right. Now, before we get into the variances that are required, I'd like to briefly touch upon some of the pre-existing non-conforming conditions. And for that, there's actually a great table that was provided within the planning and engineering report that was dated November 3rd, 2020. You've reviewed that report, correct?
I have, yes.
Okay, so I'm starting on page 3 of the report. There's a table of existing nonconformities, things like minimum lot width and lot area. Can you just very briefly describe those existing nonconformities and indicate whether they are changing?
Sure. There are a few nonconformities that are not changing. They're unaffected by the development. Just for minimum lot area of where 40 acres is required and 22.8 acres exists. A minimum lot width where 551 exists and is proposed, where 1,000 feet is required. Minimum front yard building setback where 200 feet is required and 36.6 feet is provided. And the minimum rear setback where 100 feet is required and 9.8 is provided in the existing and proposed condition.
And all of those setbacks, I think there's also buffers mentioned there. None of those conditions are proposed to be changed by this application. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So briefly then discussing what relief we do need. Is it your understanding that we require a D4 variance for the increase in FAR?
That is correct. As we said, there is a 6,455 square foot expansion or increase to the building, which results in a minimal increase to the FAR.
And that's a 0.01, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's going from 0.25 to 0.26, where 0.2 is required, and 0.25 was actually the subject of a previous approval.
Okay. And there are also 2 C variances that are needed. One relates to parking spaces that I'm going to defer talking about for a moment because it'll come up in the context of the traffic letter. The other is for the trash enclosures and the screening of the trash enclosures. Can you briefly discuss the location of the trash enclosures, both the proposed new trash enclosure for the grocer use and then the reconfiguration of the dumpsters back in that triangular wedge?
Sure. So the triangular wedge, we'll start there, is an existing paved area. Like I said, we are adding some parking spaces in the back there. The dumpsters are, as noted by the board professionals, the dumpsters are sporadically placed. So as part of the striping, we will be placing them more appropriately, essentially. Then sorry, go ahead.
They will not be in enclosures, correct?
They will not be in enclosures. They will just be placed better for operations, I would say.
And Ms. Swan, I know we can't use the pointer, but if you're able to use the pointer to just show those striped areas in the wedge shape in the back. Nope, over behind the Dollar Tree we're speaking about. Yes, in there.
Right,
so the dumpsters will be back in that location in the striped areas. Is that correct?
Correct. And again, they are existing dumpsters. We're just cleaning up the area a little bit with the parking striping.
And is that area visible to the people who are using the shopping center?
It is not. It's in the rear of the buildings and not public facing.
Okay. And then as for the trash enclosure servicing the grocer, those dumpsters will be in an enclosure, correct?
Correct. There's 4 dumpsters proposed on the plan right now. They will be within a CMU wall enclosure with gates, and they will be screened from interior traffic, but similar to the other dumpsters, they are not public facing.
But there won't be any landscaping back in the loading dock, correct?
That is correct, and that's an existing non-conforming condition, and there pretty much isn't room to add any landscaping in that area. So we will be requesting a variance for that, specific to the landscaping requirement.
So I'd like to talk about the waivers that we need related to the parking layout. If you could show the area of the site and describe the new parking space configuration and the 4 waivers that we need.
Yes, so as mentioned, we are reconfiguring the parking in the storefront. The waivers are all related to parking, and they're a product of trying to maintain the majority of the existing parking. There are existing nonconformities out there as well. One is for parking lot landscaping, where 20% is required. The existing is 12.43%, and we're increasing slightly to 12.55%. The second one is for parking stall length, where 20 feet is required. 18 feet is the existing stall length, and we are maintaining that non-conformity. The third one is for the curb radii, where 5 feet is required. There are a few spaces where the geometry of the parking just will not allow for 5 foot radius, so we have slightly less than 5 foot radius. And the last one is for intermediate landscaped islands within rows of parking, which again is an existing non-conforming condition that we're just extending with the reconfigured parking.
Okay, I would like to turn to the memo that was prepared by the board's consulting traffic engineer that was dated October 29th and then updated November 5th. Before we begin, with the exception of the few items that we are going to discuss, is it the applicant's position that we will comply with the remaining items?
That is correct.
Okay, so let's go through and talk about the few that require discussion. For the board, items 6, 7, 8, 15, and 26. I'm going to take them as a bit of a group. For each of those items, it's my understanding that the board's consulting traffic engineer has suggested minor reconfigurations of parking spaces that ultimately may result in us not being able to add quite as many spaces as we hoped. With the application, we'd originally planned to add 32 spaces, but some of the spaces might have been a bit pinched. And so for those items, is it your testimony that we will agree to comply with the suggestions of the consulting traffic engineer, even if it does result in the loss of somewhere between 12 and 15 spaces?
That is correct.
Okay. If we were to lose 12 to, let's say, 15 spaces in working through that geometry with the consulting traffic engineer, how many spaces would still result as being in the approved plan?
So the current plan as submitted showed 1,162 spaces. So accounting for approximately 15 spaces lost through compliance, we will be looking at 1,147 proposed parking spaces.
And how many parking spaces exist today?
Today there are 1,130, so it'll be an increase of about 17 spaces.
That still falls short of the requirement of 1,289, is that correct?
That is correct.
But it would still result in 17 more spaces than we have out there today, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. In the report then, just briefly, we've talked about items 6, 7, 8, 15, and 26. Item 9 asks for testimony concerning the curbside pickup spaces. There are 10 that are proposed. Can you describe why those are needed?
Yeah, the 10 spaces are for customer pickup and also for third-party grocery contractors such as Instacart. They are, especially with the times today of COVID, of online shopping, the tenant feels that that number is required for operations.
Okay. Item 21 in the report asks for testimony concerning the tractor trailer route and whether the trucks that would service the grocer would follow the route that's being used by other tenants today.
Yes, and unfortunately I can't exactly point to the plan, but trucks currently enter from Ernston Road, go through the ring road along near Bubba's, down near Pep Boys, and turn to the rear of the property. The existing tenants, delivery trucks do that, and the proposed tenant will do that as well.
Okay. So we are not proposing to change the direction or flow of any of the truck traffic.
There is no change to vehicle circulation now.
Okay. So then moving along to number 22, there was a request that we consider mountable curb over in the area near Pep Boys, where we're making some modifications to widen that access driveway. What is your thoughts on that suggestion?
And just for the board's reference, it's the striped area on the left of the plan right now. We are certainly open to exploring that option with the board and engineer, and we will work with them through compliance, just to make sure there might be some engineering challenges, but we're obviously willing to work with them.
So that addresses all the comments. As we indicated, the applicant will comply with all of the remaining comments. The traffic letter, I would like to turn.
Sorry, Jen, one more on that. Comment number 23, as for additional sidewalk near the Pep Boys in that same area we were just talking about. It is mentioned in the planner and engineer letter as well, but just want to be on record here that we will comply with that, but want to note that the sidewalk will not be ADA compliant due to the existing grades.
Okay, and that's to provide a sidewalk connection heading towards the Home Depot site, off-site, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and that was at the suggestion of both the consulting traffic engineer and the township engineer.
Correct.
Okay, then moving to the report, have you had a chance to review the report that was prepared by the township's consulting township engineer and planner dated November 3rd, 2020?
I have.
Okay, and once again, we're only going to touch upon those items that are where we've been asked to provide additional discussion. And we'll start with 1B, asked for information about hours of operation or deliveries for the grocer use. And this is 1B of the planning comments.
Correct. So yes, it is a grocery use. It is permitted within this zone. The hours of operation are going to be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Deliveries will occur at various times throughout the day, but they will comply with the zoning requirements for noise and delivery window. And there'll be about 70 employees on a max shift, and probably about 300 total employees for the new tenant.
Okay. 1C asked if outdoor dining was contemplated. Do you know if that's contemplated?
There is no outdoor dining proposed.
Okay. I had highlighted item 4 to talk about the variance required for the dumpsters, but we have already covered that. So then I'd like to turn to the engineering comments. There's actually one that I will address, and that's item F, and that concerns an encroachment that's shown on the plans. There's a small encroachment where the curbing in the very rear of the site may cross over the property line. That curbing has been there for at least 20 years. We checked back and found that the site plan and subdivision application files by the owner of that property back in 2000 showed that encroachment. We are not asking to change it. We're not asking to add more. We're not asking to do anything with it. The curb that's there will stay there. We're not asking your permission to do anything to expand upon it. But that's all the way in the back rear corner of the site behind the loading dock. The property behind us is owned by the same owner as the Home Depot with an easement to JCP&L, and it's currently a wooded lot. Next, I would though like to ask Mr. Quigley to address item I of the engineering comments, which asks if we would be adding another access driveway. If you could address that comment, please.
Yeah, there was a recommendation to possibly change the existing entrance driveway along Route 9 to be full access for in and out rather than just in. That would require a major access permit from NJDOT. We have applied to DOT for our letter of no interest for the small increase in square footage, and we anticipate receiving approval for that. As for actually changing the access, we acknowledge the suggestion, I'll say. We will, as I already mentioned, the site is serviced by tractor trailers. There is existing vehicle circulation that we're not changing. So we're going to respectfully take their second suggestion to add wayfinding signage for truck traffic through the site.
Okay. That brought us to all of the remaining comments. The applicant will agree to comply and to work with the engineer and planner to address anything else that was remaining from that letter. The only other letter that we received was from the fire marshal. And on that letter, Mr. Quigley, is it your position that related to the letter dated October 13th, that the applicant will comply and will provide the fire marshal with whatever plans he needs as a condition of approval? And in fact, I believe that our client has already reached out to the fire marshal to begin those discussions.
That is correct.
Okay. So that is all I have for Mr. Quigley on direct. Like I said, our only other person that we'd like to bring up to testify would be our planner, but I'm sure the board has questions or comments at this point.
Had to turn the mic off. The bird was screaming again. Sorry. Ms. Drum, you're in on this one, right?
Yes, I am.
And Ms. Shapiro, you're in, and Ms. Sawan is in, correct? Why don't we go to Ms. Shapiro? I'll go right across the screen then.
So, I did want to talk about the comment on where the encroachment I get. The encroachment I would have to defer to our attorney, Mr. Sachs, only because I saw it. And so it's like I can't ignore it, right? And it's not a little, it's like 10 feet of pavement and curbing and, you know, into somebody else's property. So I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that, you know, the delivery area in the back, I would say almost like a lane worth at some point, is within somebody else's property. You know, I didn't know if it was something that maybe the applicant or the owners of the property wanted to make right now, like, you know, to fix it at this point. I do understand your position. You want to get the grocery store in there. I want to see the grocery. I'm dying to know what it is. Although I have my theories, you know, so that I would leave to whether it's necessary from our board attorney. As for the circulation part of it, I frequent this shopping center. I've been there. I've never ever seen a tractor trailer traverse in the parking lot. And at first I was, and in fact, all the sign is all deliveries are to go to that back entrance. So I've never ever seen anything, not even like, you know, the smaller deliveries, they all go to the back. So when I was thinking about this, especially with the Dunkin' Donuts, right, that exit only driveway. So I believe Mr. Quigley had said, you know, full access. No, it's exit only, and I want to make it an entrance only. Mind you, people have been complaining because people were using that as an entrance. So it's not a bad change. You know, I had quickly put together just a little sketch, and I drew in there a curb return to get you into that driveway. But really that radius, the southerly radius should be changed as well to make sure that, you know, vehicles that were entering that driveway, you know, are only entering and not exiting. So I think what I was trying to say is it's worth a discussion with DOT to get that truck traffic on Route 9 and to have them enter directly from the back, because the only person that needs to enter this way is the grocer, because he has to back into that, you know, Vina, if you could put it where you see the loading dock, the angle of the loading dock is such that he's not going to come in from Ernston Road and be face forward, right? He has to traverse from the other side so he could back into that loading dock. He's the only one that's going to be traversing this whole site. So if you're a larger truck, you don't want these trucks to, I mean, if I was a shopper here and I started to have to fight with an 18-wheeler or, you know, a larger truck so I can get to, I don't think I'd come here and shop again. I wouldn't want that confrontation in a parking lot. So I'm saying it's the applicant should have that conversation with DOT and to see what would be necessary. You know, it's advantageous to the applicant to have that conversation. That's what I'm saying. So although that suggestion was made to put the wayfinding signs, I mean, you know, Vina, with your cursor, come off of Ernston Road and traverse in front of the Bubba's. Show everybody the path. No, not the path that you enter now as a trucker or as a come off of Ernston, come towards the Bubba, not the delivery, but towards the Bubba, right in front of there. And then you're going to go to that new where Pep Boys is. You're going to make the right turn and come all the way into the back. That's a lot of traversing with just shoppers, you know, for that delivery. So, you know, I'm not saying that it would be the be all end all. Like I'm saying we need to have some sort of conversation with DOT on what if, because there's people that are using that as an entrance already. You know, why not have that as an entrance? You know, and if people want to exit the site, they go south of the Dunkin' Donuts or they go north of this driveway, and they could certainly exit the site. There's a lot of exit options on this property.
And Ms. Shapiro, if I may just respond very quick to that. You mentioned that the new tenant would be the only tenant that would need to use the route. But
Yep.
actually the existing Modell's is loaded in the same exact direction, as well as the Marshalls. The loading dock faces Ernston Road, and they cannot enter the back entrance and complete the typical truck turn radius that you need for a
I mean,
tractor trailer.
would you, Mr. Quigley, would you say that the truck that's delivering the sneakers is the same truck size that would be delivering to the grocer?
Yes, I mean, the large national tenants like Modell's and Marshalls, they receive, regional deliveries. So it's not just a simple box truck delivering to one store. It's coming from a warehouse that is, using a WV67 typical tractor trailer. So that,
Again, I've never seen a truck traverse inside this parking lot. And I'm not saying it's not true. Maybe they're coming there at 6 a.m. and I'm not there. But I do think it's worth having a conversation to keep the trucks out of the parking lot.
I think the issue is overall definitely timing. A major access permit, especially currently, is something that could take a year in order to get permitted, which I think for this particular deal, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for my client, but I don't know that the tenant is going to wait the year for us to go through that process, in this retail climate. I mean, frankly, there'll be plenty of other places for them to choose from. And so if we had to wait a year to go to DOT to get the access points changed on Route 9, I don't know that it would end up with a grocer being in this location.
And certainly, I don't think Old Bridge Township wants to lose any tenant that wants to come in here. But again, it's a conversation with them, right? So we wouldn't should the board look favorably on the application, we wouldn't hold up anything for you to have a conversation with them. If they come back to you and say, we rather this be an out right away, then we know that there's no conversation. But if they're saying it would take you to revise the access permit, we'll let you leave this open, you don't have to do anything else but to change the radius and you're fine, because I think there was a drainage inlet there. You change the drainage inlet, the B inlet to an E inlet, and you see the effort involved, why not investigate that? But as part of compliance resolution, we could certainly, and I mean, your client has to deal with traversing the lot to get to there, we could certainly deal with it, but we wouldn't want you to stop to have that, not to have that conversation.
Yeah, if I can chime in, this is Deanna Drum. Two things. One is, I understand Jennifer's point. DOT right now is anything at DOT right now with COVID is long and lengthy. I don't think it'll be a major with planning. It'll probably be a major, but that's neither here nor there. I think I'm still scratching my head on this whole redesign, because if you have existing trucks or trucks previously that were using that internal driveway, did it not work? I think I'm struggling with that. And I know you put a template on there, but if you said the Modell's had it and the Marshalls did it, why did it work for them, but it's not going to work for you?
We're not changing the truck pattern.
Exactly. That's my point. My point is, if you're not changing the truck pattern, but as part of this application, you're now saying that internal driveway doesn't work. Why did it not work previously?
No, I don't think they're saying that.
No, we're saying it works, and we want to continue to use it the way it's.
But you're revising that internal driveway area down near the Pet Boys.
Oh, just right. I'm sorry, Mr. Quigley, if you could describe it.
That's what I'm struggling with, because
I think Deanna's point
was that the trucks, you previously used that and it worked. Why is it not working now?
So
application.
Agreed. I can understand your concern with that. Again, it does work in the current situation. We have we know that because Marshalls and Modell's load currently. The modifications for the striping and potentially the mountable curb are coming more from the tenant. It's a tenant-driven request that they just feel more comfortable with the additional clearance with the striping there.
So just so the board knows what we're looking at, it's the teardrop shaped striping in the corner of the plan, correct?
Correct. Over by
describe what's actually proposed to be changing from existing conditions there.
So where the striping is currently curbed with some parking spaces. So trucks turning right from the ring road to behind the stores in the existing condition and proposed condition can make the turn right to get to the rear of the stores. The striping is adding a little bit more room for the sweep of that truck to make the right turn.
Yeah, my one of my concerns in that area was because there's pedestrian traffic there, and as you make it wider, that's was one of my concerns with doing the mountable curb, trying to really taper that down, at least for pedestrians, so they can kind of, so this doesn't become the Wild Wild West out here, because there is Robert Wood Johnson in the back, a lot of cars parked there, so you do have a lot more circulation in that back than what you typically do. And in, other shopping centers, that's truly just a loading area. But I know you're going to work with our office. I appreciate that, Scott.
So I
I'll poke my nose in here. If you look on Google Maps right now and you put in the Gateway Shopping Center, you can see a tractor trailer exiting out onto Ernston Road. It had been behind the shopping center, so that would be the normal path. You can also see, if you look on Route 9 South, the main entrance to Gateway, that would be before, well before the Dunkin' Donuts, prior to almost where we put that V-board sign in, there's a truck that had gone in there and it had made a left. It's probably not a tractor trailer, it's certainly a full-size box, and it came in and it's making a left, you can see it. So I think that's the entrance they use. I don't believe anybody comes in off of Ernston. I really don't. I frequent that place and I don't ever recall having a problem with the trucks. You have a liquor store in there. Those are going to be tractor trailer trucks, but they're going to probably rear deliveries. So I'm pretty certain they all come in off 9 at the approved entrance. But just my thought.
Chairman Sullivan, the only reason I was asking for that driveway that was north of the Dunkin' Donuts to be revised to an inn is because it perfectly lines up with where the Pep Boys is, and then they have a straight shot in,
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I'm saying tractor trailers are probably not using that now. Maybe cars are, because it gets quite confusing. I think people panic. They see that you have the Amboy Bank, you have the entrance that you can get into the Home Depot, and you have the Dunkin' Donuts all together. And I think people just panic. And I've seen them going the wrong way as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think big trucks are going to be able to do that. And certainly grocery loads are going to necessitate probably a 53-foot trailer on a tractor.
Yeah, the trucks won't be able to do that because the curb return actually directs the person to go onto Route 9 southbound from the parking area. So a truck won't negotiate that. But what I'm asking them to do is alter it so that it's an in and not an out. And I don't want to hold up the application.
No,
I just want them to be able to have the conversation.
Yeah, I wouldn't want them to hold up the application either. I think we need to fill our stores and not leave them vacant.
Mm-hmm.
My client has said that as long as the DOT major access permit is not a condition of approval, they're certainly willing to talk to the DOT about options. As long as if the board were to approve this to go forward and allow them to be tenanted, they'd be willing to talk to the DOT about potentially doing that work. But to have it be a condition of approval would slow us, to the point of potentially not being able to bring this tenant to the site.
At least, Jennifer, something in writing, so let's say Langen is sending something to DOT in writing for us to be copied on it, and for whatever their response back to be copied on it as well. Just to show us that, there is some sort of intent on trying to do it this way.
We can certainly reach out and investigate, as long as it's not a condition of the approval to actually obtain the major access permit.
Okay, the only thing that I wanted to bring up too, and I'm not sure if Scott had spoken about it, I didn't hear it. I didn't see anything on the lighting, and I know that you were, relocating a light into an island. And if Vina, if you're listening, if you could put back up the plan, just the master site plan was fine. There was an island that you were moving the lighting to, and it's actually that proposed island in front of the building that doesn't have a crosswalk to it. But then I started to worry, well, where are the other lights? And are they in the vicinity of the crosswalks? And are the crosswalks lit correctly? And that kind of begs me to say, well, with the reconfiguration, in the areas where where you see the striping dark, and in the areas where you have these islands, right? Like, I want to see the foot candle readings in those locations to know that the striping that is crossing the main drive aisle is properly lit. So, that was one of my concerns. Other than that, from what I'm hearing is I think that Scott's going to address everything else.
And specific to the lighting comment, Nicole, we did submit a lighting plan showing foot candles for the area.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's included in the plan set. Everything is fully compliant with the zoning ordinance.
All right, I will take a.
And we're actually, relamping a large portion of the site with LED fixtures as well. So, but we can resend that to you, or I think there might even be a revised one coming.
Okay.
It's a separate lighting consultant that we're working with.
Oh, was it not part of the set?
It was part of the set, but it might have. I'm not sure why you wouldn't have seen it, to be honest with you, but.
Okay.
So we will be getting you a new one, and we'll work with you on that.
Okay, that would
The
be
intent is
great.
to be fully compliant with the lighting ordinance.
Okay. Okay, and then everything else you're going to take care of, so I'm good.
Okay, we move to Ms. Sawant.
I have no further comments. I just want to add one, since there has been a lot of testimony about the parking variance required. So just 2 months back, the township adopted an ordinance requiring any commercial property along Route 9, Route 18 that goes through a site plan approval should provide electric charging stations. And the reason I bring up, because in my memo, I did mention that at the pre-application meeting, I had brought this up with the applicant, and the applicant agreed to put in electric charging stations. But I was just checking the E-code site, and the ordinance is still not available. However, I was the author, so I remember one of the requirement is that if an applicant provides an electric charging station, then it will be counted as 3 regular parking spaces. It was an incentive to encourage developers to put in electric charging station. So I think I wanted to bring that to the board's attention. That ordinance doesn't apply to this application because this application was filed prior to the ordinance coming into effect. But I think when evaluating the parking variance, the board should have that in mind, that now we have an ordinance in place that incentivizes developers that are willing to put electric charging stations in commercial properties.
And you get 3, you count 3 for everyone, 8 for everyone? Or 3?
So 3 for every 1 electric charging station you put in.
Very nice.
We have agreed to put in 3, and we'll work with you on the signage, whatever's required by the new ordinance.
Thank you. But
Anything
that's
else,
all.
Ms. Sawant?
That's all from me.
Ms. Drum?
No further comments.
Fire Marshal? Still there? Okay. They may comment on your, I think
Yes,
you're.
but there's still demolition that has to be coordinated between the landlord, code enforcement, my office, prior to anything getting taken apart. We agree to that, right?
Absolutely. And, we would be willing to sit down with you as soon as possible to start having those discussions.
Yeah, I understand the landlord, and in my memo, it says, I've talked to so many engineers about this project that live in Ohio. But code enforcement and myself are on the same page with this. We've been in contact with each other. So I have no problem with the project, Jim, and as long as we're gonna all stay on the same page, I'm fine with this.
All right, thank you very much, Tom. I'm going to go to my board members on this witness. Mr. Scogno?
No, sir, too early for me.
Okay. Ms. Kilduff?
No, thanks.
Mr. Dewhurst,
I'm good.
Vice Chairman Walker.
I have one question. During the demolition and the proposed construction, how are you going to keep the sprinkler system up and running for all the other tenants?
That'll be handled during the building permit process. We're going to defer to the architect and the MEP engineer on that. Not really a site-related issue from our perspective.
But I would think it would be a requirement.
I'm sure the applicant's other consultants will definitely work with the township to ensure fire safety throughout construction. Yes.
So then there'll be no lapses in the sprinkler system for all the other tenant spaces.
I would imagine that'll definitely be the intent of the applicant. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stoner, anything?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Go right ahead.
There was mention about electric charger taking up, does it take up 3 spaces? Are we talking about the parking lot?
No, they're standard spaces. They have a charging station at the head of the space. I think what Ms. Sawant was referring to was an ordinance that gives the developer credit for 3 parking spaces for each 1 parking space. That's an electrical vehicle charging.
So that will be in the parking lot, right?
Correct.
So here's the question I have for you regarding to the parking space. You said that you would increase it by 17 spaces, but you're still not meeting the minimum requirement of spaces. Is that correct? So I need to know how many spaces we're getting, and then what's the minimum that's not being met? Is that correct in what I heard before? In the statement when you was talking, you're increasing the space by 17, but yet you're still not meeting the minimum requirement of spaces.
Correct. So the current site is 127 spaces deficient.
Okay, so you're going to increase it by 17.
Correct.
But what is the minimum requirement? What is the minimum requirement of spaces you're supposed to have?
1289.
1289.
A product of the building square footage increasing, the requirement is also increasing. So while we're adding 17 spaces, we're not adding the proportional amount to the building increase.
But currently there's 1,130 spaces on the site today, correct, Mr. Quigley?
That is correct.
And if this is approved, there'll be 1,147 spaces there, correct?
That is correct.
But we're not meeting the minimum requirement though, right? So it's going to be 1,147, correct?
Correct.
And so what's the minimum requirement of spaces you're supposed to be?
It's a non-conforming situation now. They only have 1,130 spaces. Under the ordinance, they need 1289, and they're going to provide 11. So it's not even in conformity now. So they are adding 17 additional spaces.
Okay. All right, fine. Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Sikowski?
I have no questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Sachs?
Yeah, I have a question or a comment, and I guess it deals with this encroachment. I don't think it's been the history of this board to ever ratify an encroachment, particularly when we're aware of it. So I think you're going to have to deal with this, Jennifer. I think either you're going to have to send a letter to, was it Home Depot?
It's not actually Home Depot. I guess it's or Wilf.
Oh, it's the Wilf organization. Okay. All right. Well, all right. So you're going to have to contact that property owner, and either you're going to have to get permission from them, or perhaps you get a license from them, just acknowledging that the encroachment is there. The last option is, and I don't dare I say, you'd have to maybe file a claim for adverse possession.
Yeah.
And I think the shopping center has been there probably before Home. I know it was.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason we know that Wilf knows about it is because it was on their application that they filed with the board 20 years ago.
Right. Okay.
They must know about it. It was on their application.
Right.
So I don't think it's a surprise to them. And their application was previously approved. I think it was also the zoning board that approved the Home Depot, but I'm not 100% certain.
I think you're right.
So it was shown on that subdivision plan. So we know it's been there more than 20 years. And we know they knew about it because they submitted the plans that showed it. So,
Right.
you know, it's a situation where, again, we're not asking for you to ratify it. We're not asking for you to say that it's, you know, permitted to be on that property. It's there. It's been there more than 20 years. And we're not making it worse. We're not putting anything else on it.
But I think as a condition of approval, you're going to have to take some action, whatever that might be, or at least get some kind of permission from them. I mean, we, you know, when we have an encroachment, it's not like it's a fence. It's about it's a 10-foot encroachment of a roadway on someone else's property. So, that's the only comment I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sachs, I recall we had a couple issues with encroachments, and we made that it had to be settled before we would on the application.
Yeah, and I think this one can be settled. I think, I think, first of all, I think the adverse possession now is 40 years, right? I don't even, it used to be 20. I think it's 40.
I think it's 30.
30. I know we knew it was not 20, but
I know it's more than 20. I don't know
it
exactly.
is more than 20. I'm sure it is. Yeah, but that's something that we have to deal with. So.
I understand the board's position. You know, obviously we would prefer not to have that as a condition because it takes some things out of our control, but we understand the board's position.
All right.
Well, you're driving in the back on someone else's land, is that?
It's the curb line is appears to be over the line in the back.
The curb line is, but you don't go
Vina,
over the curb, do you?
Vina, can you put it back up? When you're coming into the site from Ernston Road?
I guess I'm not here.
Yeah, it's in the very back corner by that triangular area of parking.
Scroll down, Vina. Okay, zoom into that top corner under where it says building summary. To me, that looks like about 10 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 9.8 feet, I think you referenced in the report.
So I colored it in the report. I colored it yellow so you could see it. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think my intent too was because I want you to, Jennifer, I don't know what the plans are for the back there, but that drive aisle there's a lot of alligator cracking. There's a lot of potholes. I'm happy that you're doing that parking lot in that notch area because that's probably, that's terrible pavement back there too. But as you get to the Ernston Road, there's deep potholes. I think there was a photo in here towards the end we had put in.
Yes.
Yeah.
We agreed that we work with you to identify the areas that need to be refreshed back there.
Okay.
All right. What? How many more witnesses you got?
The planner that I hope will be 5 minutes.
Well, you also thought the presentation was going to take a half hour.
I know. I tried. I really did.
I don't think you set your clock back.
I tried.
Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion? I know it's getting late and everybody's got to go to work tomorrow. Maybe we should hold off on this until the December meeting, and give the applicant an opportunity to also address this encroachment issue. That's just my suggestion, but I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think it's got to be addressed. I said we've had these issues before, and it's always been solved before it was approved.
Right.
So I agree with you on that. I also agree that we did go 30, 40, 50 minutes, and I understand there was a lot of bantering back and forth, but I think in the best interest of everyone, I would have to agree with Mr. Sachs, including those that are obviously all have to go to work tomorrow, as I'm sure you do as well, Ms. Smith. So why don't we leave it here at this witness and continue on to the next meeting?
All right, and Jennifer, I would suggest it's not like you can't reach out to the Wilfs. Maybe if you can get them. I see it as several options. Maybe get a letter from them acknowledging the fact that they're aware that this encroachment exists and they have no objection to the continued use of that encroachment, or a license agreement stating that you have the authority to utilize that portion of the property. I'm not sure the Wolves are going to charge anything for that. They probably shouldn't. And if they do, maybe you can get me involved in it. And then, the last option is legal action, but I don't think that's really necessary.
We'll have to speak to my client and explore our options.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Our date is, Kim, is what?
December 3rd.
December 3rd?
That's our next meeting.
Okay. So Jennifer, you will continue that December 3rd, no further notice, correct?
No, they have to further.
Because of because we're doing this, because we're doing webinar, yeah.
Jennifer, I have all the information. I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. For those watching at home, we've come to a conclusion this evening. This matter is going to be continued. This is Heritage Old Bridge, Brismore Old Bridge LLC, Gateway Shopping Center. It's to be continued to December 3rd. There will be notice for the webinar. Thank everyone here tonight, and I know it's getting late. Please be careful going home.
Thank you.
Going home.
Oh, wait, home.
Don't fall up the steps, whatever you do.
All right, good night, everyone. Happy
Good
Thanksgiving to all. Before the board adjourns, Mr. Sachs, you have anything that you want to make us aware of that you haven't?
Well, I told you about the Northwoods one, which very, very premature to do any, we'll get an answer filed. Metro Storage, I think I have my initial case management conference with Judge McCluskey, November 18th. So by December 3rd, I'll report back to you and let you know where we are on that.
Great, thanks. Ms. Silverman, anything?
Nope, the next meeting is December 3rd, 7:30. I will get everybody involved. Right now, Jennifer's application, besides Kathy's application for a vote, are the only two things that are on right now.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
All right, board members, someone want to move for an adjournment?
Wait, I want to say Happy Thanksgiving.
Go ahead, what?
I want to say Happy Thanksgiving to everybody first.
Let's, as the board, we wish each other a happy Thanksgiving and a safe one too. So, well, somebody going to move for an adjournment?
Motion, I said it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I said it. Okay.
Adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving.